Chapter 1342 The Lightning Tribulation Escapes. Catcher. As soon as he stepped into the storm clouds, a bolt of lightning immediately came zapping his way. Zhongxian swiftly gathered his zhenqi to defend against it. Pu. A spurt of fresh blood escaped from his mouth as his hair stood up from the static electricity. Due to Bai Hongyan and the others' interference, the lightning tribulation had already grown to a level far beyond what he could deal with. Even if he used all of his means possible, he was not absolutely confident that he would be able to withstand it. Zhongxian swiftly realized that even when driving his Heaven's Path zhenqi to its maximum to heal up his injuries, his recovery was unable to keep up with the rate at which the lightning was burning away his body. Thus, he raised his eyebrows and tapped at the area before him. Flowing water sword intent. Tzzzzzzzz. Countless surges of sword qi burst forth from his acupoints, forming a massive barrier. It had to be said that the flowing water swordsmanship was indeed very powerful. It formed an absolute defense shell that not even the fluidity of water was able to breach. Catcher. 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 Nevertheless, under the relentless strikes of the lightning bolts, Zhongxian's face swiftly paled. Even though I am able to keep the lightning bolts completely at bay with my flowing water swordsmanship, the might that they harness is simply too strong. I won't be able to sustain this for long. This was similar to how even though an umbrella was able to fend off a downpour, it could not shelter one from a hailstorm. The absolute defense shell formed by his flowing water swordsmanship allowed him to keep the lightning bolts at bay, but due to the limitations of his cultivation, he could not maintain it for too long. In at most 10 breaths, his sword qi would dissipate under the furious onslaught of lightning, and he would be back to square one. Taking a deep breath, Zhongxian drew out his primordial spirit without any hesitation. I won't be able to survive at this rate. I must raise my physical body cultivation and soul cultivation swiftly. Unlike the time when he made a breakthrough right above the entrance to the mountain gate, he had dived into the depths of the storm clouds this time around, so no outsider was able to see what he was doing, and this cover allowed him to utilize all of his means without any fear. Cultivate. Zhongxian's body had already comprehended Mind of Void, which granted it the ability to cultivate independently. It would be much more efficient if he cultivated both his soul and body simultaneously. Tzzzzzzzz. After ingesting the Jade Pearl Sap and Origin Spirit Pill, Zhongxian's body reflexively drove its zhenqi according to the method detailed in the Heaven's Path Golden Body, and his physical body grew stronger at a rate visible to the eye. Dead skin peeled off layer after layer from his body, creating a sight reminiscent of a cicada escaping from its shell. Once one's physical body cultivation had reached Zhongxian's current level, advancing it even slightly was an incredibly difficult feat. Typical means such as tempering one's body with flames or ice were no longer effective anymore. In one of the manuals that the fatty had taken out, it detailed how an expert physical body cultivator studied the molting of cicadas when a sudden inspiration struck him, and he created a technique that allowed humans to strip off their old cells, a little like cicadas. Each time one molted away old cells, one's physical body would be able to grow a little stronger. Through repeating this process over a long period of time, one would become extremely powerful. The Heaven's Path Golden Body that Zhongxian had just compiled was centered around this notion. As Zhongxian shed more and more layers of old cells, his skin grew younger and supple. However, in contrast to his appearance, his body was actually growing more and more resilient, slowly creeping up from the level of a Saint Intermediate Tier artifact to Saint High Tier artifact. While his physical body swiftly grew stronger, his primordial spirit was also frenziedly absorbing spiritual energy from the Jade Spirit Essence. As he drove his zhenqi according to the Leaving Aperture Realm Heaven's Path Soul Art, spiritual energy was diving into the acupoints on his primordial spirit like mini vortices, nourishing it. Hong Long. In the blink of an eye, his soul had already achieved a breakthrough to half-Leaving Aperture Realm, and it was swiftly surging forth toward Leaving Aperture Realm Primary Stage. However, it did not take long before the spiritual energy within the Jade Pearl Sap, Origin Spirit Pill, and Jade Spirit Essence was completely depleted. Even though items that Luo Shenqing and the others had given him were superior cultivation resources, the simultaneous cultivation of his physical body and soul required too much spiritual energy. They simply were not sufficient for him to master those two cultivation techniques together. I can't keep up with the flowing water swordsmanship much longer. As if adding to his injury, the sword chi that was protecting him was starting to falter as well, threatening to collapse in on him at any moment. Knowing that he was still in no state to face the lightning tribulation yet, Zhongxian quickly flicked his wrist and instructed the figure materializing before him, "Clone, help me fend off the lightning tribulation for a while and buy me some time." He and his clone were considered a single entity, so even if he were to use his clone to fend off the lightning tribulation, it would not result in the intensification of the ordeal. "It's just a mere lightning tribulation. Look how scared it has made you. Pass the heavens path soul art to me." As soon as his clone appeared, he harumphed coldly with a lofty look on his face. Without any hesitation, he leaped right into the sea of lightning. "Catcher! Catcher!" Bolts of lightning immediately surged toward him, but his clone stood fearlessly in their face. Stretching his back lazily, he casually whipped out a towel and began scrubbing his back. The scrubbing of the towel spread the lightning shocks equally throughout his clone's body, and his aura and soul began to grow at a visible rate. Zhongxian's lips twitched. He had also used this method to temper his primordial spirit back at the entrance of the mountain gate, but who would have thought that this fellow had actually learnt this from him? If he's able to endure the lightning, I should be able to do so. Perhaps, I might even be able to induce a significant enhancement in my soul and physical body under the tempering of the lightning bolt. Watching as his scrubbing clone sent a disdainful look toward him, seemingly mocking his weakness, Zhongxian gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He did not have any other cultivation resources that were suited for his cultivation at the moment, and he was completely surrounded by lightning bolts, leaving him nowhere to escape to. If he did not find a solution soon, he really might lose his life. Since his clone was able to survive the lightning bolts without trouble, surely, he, as the main body, should be able to do so as well. Thus, Zhongxian returned his soul to his physical body and retracted the defensive barrier of sword qi that he had put up, allowing the lightning in his surroundings to wash over him. Pu. The immense surge of electricity caused his body to stiffen, and a mouthful of blood splattered from his mouth. A thought suddenly came to Zhongxian's mind. Perhaps, if I could have my Heaven's Path Zhenqi imitate the attribute of the lightning energy around me, I might be able to withstand its might. Considering how the Heaven's Path Zhenqi was able to imitate even the otherworldly demonic tribe's Zhenqi of slaughter, it should have no trouble copying the lightning attribute of the energy around him as well. Thus, Zhongxian began focusing his attention in an attempt to grasp the power of lightning around him, and as he slowly circulated the Zhenqi in his body, a hint of the lightning attribute really emerged in his Heaven's Path Zhenqi. Catcher. Right after he converted his Zhenqi to the lightning attribute, another lightning bolt fell upon him. Even though it still left him feeling deeply uncomfortable, it was no longer as intolerable as it had been previously. Zhongxian's eyes lit up in delight. Great. He had only tried it on a whim, but it really worked out for him. Another thought suddenly emerged in Zhongxian's mind, and his body began trembling in agitation. Since my Zhenqi has changed to the lightning attribute, will I be able to absorb the lightning energy in the surroundings? Just as a practitioner of cold attribute cultivation techniques like Chen Liao could cultivate through absorbing the wintry spirit essence, considering that his Zhenqi was currently of the lightning attribute, would he be able to absorb the surrounding lightning energy as well? Just looking at the unimaginable congregation of lightning energy around him was enough to make the edges of Zhongxian's lips creep up uncontrollably. His soul had once absorbed the lightning energy within Qiu Wu Palace. Of course, the lightning energy he had absorbed back then had originated from a formation, so naturally, it could not hold a candle to that of lightning tribulations, the violent might of the heavens. But still, that showed that the notion was not completely impossible. I should give it a try. Knowing that absorbing the rampaging energy of the lightning tribulation was bound to be extremely difficult, Zhongxian took a deep breath and resolved himself. Swinging the sword in his hand, he began executing the flowing water swordsmanship to protect himself once more, but he left a small gap to allow a small spark of lightning to creep in. Hong long long. As soon as Zhongxian absorbed the lightning spark into his body, it began wreaking havoc, knocking forcefully here and there to cause as much destruction as it could. In the blink of an eye, several of Zhongxian's meridians were torn apart. Even with lightning attribute Zhenqi, It was still extremely difficult for a cultivator to control the violent energy of the lightning tribulation. Otherwise, with lightning attribute cultivators drawing upon the might of the heavens at their whim, who would be able to match them? I should try merging the lightning spark with my zhenqi. Zhongxian had expected at least this amount of damage to occur. Even though the rampaging lightning spark left him feeling as if thousands of needles were ripping him apart from the inside, he forced himself to keep his calm and began converging his Heaven's Path zhenqi on the lightning spark. Tz la. Perhaps due to the encompassing nature of the Heaven's Path zhenqi, as soon as his lightning attribute zhenqi came into contact with the lightning spark, they immediately merged together, forming a much purer, more powerful surge of energy. It really works. This success meant that he would be able to use all of the lightning energy gathered there as spiritual energy to fuel his cultivation. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhongxian retracted his sword and simultaneously opened all of his acupoints wide. The surrounding lightning energy was swiftly drawn to his body as if a vortex, and he desperately assimilated the massive influx with his Heaven's Path zhenqi. It did not take long for Zhongxian's soul cultivation to exceed leaving Aperture Realm primary stage, and his physical body was swiftly growing stronger and stronger as well. Are you all ready? Luo Shenqing asked. Yuan Bai Hongyin and the others nodded. As powerful as the lightning tribulation before them was, they had no other choice at this point. After all, they could not possibly watch idly by the side as Zhongxian was zapped into ashes. Thus, after some discussion, they eventually decided to dash in to save him, and at the same time, they would use their most powerful moves to forcefully dissipate the storm clouds. If everything worked out, they would be freed from the danger they were in. Even if their attempt failed, at the very least, they would have another pair of hands on their side. All right, ready yourselves. Luo Shenqing looked at the storm clouds above as he drove his zhenqi furiously. However, just as he was about to call for them to set off, a shocked voice suddenly exclaimed beside him. Wait a moment. Is it just me, or is something amiss with the lightning tribulation? The one who had just spoken was the shorty. His eyes were fixated on the sky, and there was a doubtful frown hanging on his forehead. Something amiss? Luo Shenqing was perplexed by Shorty's sudden remark. What do you mean by that? The other two also turned their sights over. Take a closer look. Doesn't it seem like the storm clouds are moving? The shorty asked. Moving? Bewildered, the crowd quickly turned their gazes to the sky as well, and just as what Shorty had said, the storm clouds were indeed moving. The densest congregation of storm clouds had been right above them a moment ago. However, at that moment, it seemed to have deviated to the side. Bai Hongyin frowned in incomprehension. Once the lightning tribulation falls, unless the person undergoing the ordeal flees, it shouldn't move. Lightning tribulation was an ordeal from the heavens. As long as the one undergoing the ordeal did not flee, the lightning tribulation would not move easily. Considering that Zhongxian was currently in the midst of the storm clouds, completely surrounded by lightning energy, there was no way he would be able to move around the place. So, why were the storm clouds moving then? While they were still perplexed, the storm clouds completely evacuated from the area just above them, revealing a figure in the blue sky. It was Zhongxian. His fine. Seeing that the young man had not yet been burnt to a crisp, Luo Shenqing and the others instinctively heaved a sigh of relief. Just as they were about to beckon him to hurry down, the young man suddenly opened his eyes and bellowed furiously. Where do you think you are going? After which, the young man dashed forward and charged right into the midst of the storm clouds. Pilipala. A series of lightning sparks and thunderous rumbling echoed. Following which, the clouds deviated to the side, revealing the young man's figure once more. Hey, stop running away, the young man roared before dashing forward once again. Hoo. This time, even though Zhongxian's movements were swift, the storm clouds were even faster. As if chased by some kind of monster, they flitted away desperately. You! Seething with rage, Zhongxian chased the storm clouds persistently. However, the fact that the lightning tribulation was able to appear whenever a cultivator was to undergo an ordeal meant that the speed that it could move at was far beyond that of any cultivator. It took only a few moments before it disappeared beyond the horizon. He scared away the lightning tribulation? All along, it has always been the lightning tribulation who chased after cultivators, but he actually made the lightning tribulation flee in a fluster. Luo Shenqing, Bai Hongyin, and the others grasped at their hair as they stared at the sight before them in utter shock. Chapter 1343 Treasure Hunters. What a pity! Seeing that the lightning tribulation had been scared into fleeing, Zhongxian shook his head in disappointment. After converting his Heaven's Path Zhenqi to lightning attribute, he was indeed able to absorb the lightning energy to advance his cultivation swiftly. But upon witnessing how happy he was absorbing the surrounding lightning energy, his clone also began absorbing as well. And the result of that was the sight which everyone had just seen. Seeing how furiously its energy was being devoured, the lightning tribulation was terrified, and it immediately turned around and fled. For the lightning tribulation, the existence of fear to all cultivators, to end up running away instead. There was no way they would have believed such a thing to be possible if they hadn't seen it unfolding before their very eyes. However, even though the lightning tribulation didn't have any sentience, considering how it had the ability to grow stronger in accordance to the strength of the one undergoing the ordeal, it wasn't too surprising to think that it would have the ability to avert danger as well. Given how furiously he and his clone were absorbing its energy, it was only natural that it would be frightened. I should have absorbed more while I could. I only managed to advance my cultivation up to leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, and I'm not done cultivating my Heaven's Path Golden Body yet. My physical body is only on par with half-saint high-tier artifacts at the moment. Zhongxian shook his head and sighed deeply. He was still thinking that given how huge the lightning tribulation was, he would at least be able to master the Heaven's Path Soul Art and Heaven's Path Golden Body. Who could have thought that it would suddenly turn around and run away? Oh well. At the very least, I did manage to advance my fighting prowess considerably. With my current strength, I should be able to match Saint 6 Dan Grand Dominion Realm Pinnacle experts even without using the 3 swords of Lingshu. In fact, even half-phantasmal space experts shouldn't pose too much of a threat to me. Zhongxian consoled himself. In this short period of time, not only did he manage to raise his Zhenqi cultivation to Saint 5 Dan leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle, he also managed to advance his soul cultivation to leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, and his physical body achieved a level of resilience comparable to half-saint high-tier artifacts. All in all, they added up to a several-fold increment in his fighting prowess. Previously, there was no way he would be able to defeat the puppet of the Jiao Corridor without using the 3 swords of Lingshu, but with his newfound strength, he would be able to crush the latter with just a single finger. In fact, even if he stood on the spot and allowed the puppet to attack him freely, the latter would still be unable to inflict the slightest bit of injury on him. And of course, if he were to use the 3 swords of Lingshu, he would be able to match even Saint 7 Dan Intermediate Stage Expert. If he were to face Luo Shenqing once more, even if he was still no match for the other party, at the very least, he wouldn't be as powerless as he was previously. Alright, I'll be heading off to rest first. Remember to inform me the next time something as good as a lightning tribulation occurs. I haven't had my fill yet. The voice of Zhongxian's clone echoed in his mind. As soon as the lightning tribulation showed signs of fleeing, his clone had decisively returned back to the myriad anthive nest in order to prevent anyone from noticing his presence. Zhongxian nodded. Just like how Zhongxian's fighting prowess had grown substantially from absorbing the energy from the lightning tribulation, his clone had also benefited greatly from the earlier free buffet. In fact, it seemed like his clone had grown by a greater degree at that. In the first place, his clone was forged out of the 9 Hearts Lotus, which was invulnerable to lightning. Due to the immense amount of lightning energy it had absorbed, it gained the ability to infuse the power of lightning in its attacks, thus resulting in a significant enhancement in its fighting prowess. Even without crossing hands, Zhongxian was well aware that he was no match for his clone in his current state. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh deeply once more. Others might think that he possessed decent talent, but the truth was that he was someone who couldn't even match up to his disciple, subordinate, his girlfriend, and even his own clone. Was there anyone in the world who was as pathetic as him? He couldn't help but feel deeply stifled within. It felt like the long year he had spent cultivating had been all in vain. "Are you all right?" When Zhongxian finally returned back to Luo Shenqing and the others, He saw that everyone was staring at him with looks of disbelief. "I'm fine." Zhongxian nodded before grumbling indignantly, "If not for that coward fleeing so quickly, I would have definitely taught it a good lesson." The crowd. "Let me introduce this bunch over here to you." Knowing that they would only feel more stifled if they were to continue chatting about the topic, Luo Shenqing gestured to the other three and introduced them. "You should know by Hongyin by now, she's a genius from the Demonic Tunist Guild headquarters. This towering fatty over here is a prodigy from the Yuan clan, Yuan Xiao. And last but not least, this shorty over here is a genius from the Yun clan, Yun Lianhai. Pleased to meet all of you." Zhongxian clasped his fist and greeted them. Indeed. People of a certain social standing did tend to hang out with those of the same standing as them. The Yuan clan and Demonic Tunist Guild headquarters. He had never heard of the Yun clan before, but given how the shorty was able to fit into their group as well, the Yun clan must be a rather formidable power as well. As for this young man over here, his Zhongxian, Zhongshe. I met him yesterday while I was taking the 8-star formation master examination. I believe you all should have gotten a good glimpse of his capabilities by now." Luo Shenqing said. Of course, of course." The others quickly nodded in agreement. Not only did the young man manage to shatter Bai Hongyin's formation plate with ease, he even sent the lightning tribulation fleeing in fear. They had no idea of knowing what the young man did in the storm clouds to produce such an inconceivable outcome, but just based on what he had accomplished so far, they dared not to underestimate him anymore. Brother Luo, you haven't explained why you brought me here yet." Seeing that he had received the acknowledgement of the crowd, Zhongxian turned a doubtful gaze toward Luo Shenqing and asked. He was in the midst of a networking event in the elite division when Luo Shenqing suddenly dragged him here. Despite all that had happened, he still wasn't too sure what the latter was up to. Luo Shenqing sealed the surroundings with a wave of his hand in order to prevent others from eavesdropping in before whispering with a hushed voice, "Just a while ago, I discovered a blessed land, and within it, I found a growing, Dongshu gourd." Dongshu gourd? Zhongxian frowned. Despite the huge number of books he had never read of the Dongshu gourd before. Dongshu gourd is a treasure of nature. Using the earth veins as its roots, it absorbs the essence of the sun and the moon, and it takes 10,000 years before it flowers, and another 10,000 years before it bears fruit. In each earth vein, there can only be one Dongshu gourd. As a result of that, Dongshu gourds are extremely rare and valuable. If one can cultivate it and fuse it into one's body, the chances which one would be able to achieve a breakthrough to Saint 8 Dan would be increased by at least 50%. Luo Shenqing said 50%? Zhongxian widened his eyes in astonishment. Beyond Saint 5 Dan, while cultivation resources were still as important as always, the cultivator must also achieve a deep understanding of the surrounding heaven and earth and the spatial laws too. As such, any artifact which could increase one's chances of success by 10% or 20% would be highly sought after by all cultivators. It was unimaginable for an item to be able to raise one's chances of achieving a breakthrough to Saint 8 Dan by 50%. Indeed. However, the blessed land I have found is fraught with dangers, and it'll be difficult for me to succeed alone. That's the reason why I gathered everyone here, and as long as I can obtain the Dongshu gourd, I'll compensate all of you handsomely for your efforts." Luo Shenqing said with a sharp glint in his eyes. The Dongshu gourd would a crucial factor in determining whether he would be able to achieve a breakthrough to Saint 8 Dan or not. He was determined to obtain it, by hook or by crook. Hearing those words, Zhongxian nodded in realization. He thought that they had gathered here to challenge some kind of trial, but that was clearly not the case now. Luo Shenqing had invited all of them here to engage their help in obtaining the Dongshu gourd. Is there a powerful formation guarding the Dongshu gourd or something? Zhongxian asked. Considering how his cultivation paled far in comparison to the rest of the group, the only reason he could think of why Luo Shenqing would invite him here was due to his proficiency in formations. Yuan, there's a grade 8 pinnacle formation around the Dongshu gourd. I'm not too sure who set the formation up, but I have attempted to breach the formation twice but failed on both occasions. Luo Shenqing replied with a nod. As one of the top clans on the master-teacher continent, the Luo clan should have plenty of capable formation masters. It shouldn't be too difficult for you to engage the help of a couple of them to help you breach the grade 8 pinnacle formation, right? Zhongxian asked doubtfully. Given the strength and standing of the Luo clan, putting aside a grade 8 pinnacle formation, they would surely have talents who could easily decipher grade 9 formations as well. Why would Luo Shenqing seek his help instead? The situation is not that easy. The blessed land I spoke about has strict restrictions on it. Those whose ages are over 40 or cultivations are at Saint 8 Dan or above are prohibited from entering. If one were to forcefully barge in, there's a very good chance that the blessed land would collapse inward, thus causing the treasures within to disappear for good. Luo Shenqing said with a bitter smile. There's such a restriction? Zhongxian was taken aback. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind, and he asked, is it be possible that the blessed land is an ancient domain left behind by an old expert? As Luo Shenqing had said that the Dongshu Gourd was a treasure of nature, he instinctively assumed that the blessed land it was located in would be a natural terrain as well. However, the presence of a formation and restrictions sounded too much like a man-made work. Of course, the Dongshu Gourd can grow in natural conditions too, but as soon as it starts to flower, the aura that it emanates will swiftly draw others to it. Under such circumstances, there's no way it would be able to survive until maturity. Luo Shenqing replied. I see. Zhongxian nodded. Treasures like the Dongshu Gourd were extremely valuable. If it wasn't guarded by a formation or something of the sort, there was no way they would have been able to get a shot at it. This is how it is. So, I would like to formally invite you to join our team, and regardless of whether we succeed or not, I'll compensate you with a pinnacle spirit stone and a half-saint high-tier artifact for your effort. Luo Shenqing said. Pinnacle spirit stone? Those 3 words immediately sparked up a radiant glow in Zhongxian's eyes. Putting aside that Luo Shenqing was his future brother-in-law, a close kin of Luo Ruoxin and soon-to-be close kin of his, just on the pinnacle spirit stone itself, there was no way he would turn down this mission. After all, that was what he was lacking the most at the moment. If he could obtain even a pinnacle spirit stone, he wouldn't have to worry over a lack of spiritual energy for quite a while. At the very least, it should be sufficient for him to reach Saint 6 Dan, or if luck had it, perhaps even Saint 7 Dan as well. That's right. I don't have the pinnacle spirit stones on me yet, but I have already applied for them from my clan. They should be here by the time we return from the blessed land. Luo Shenqing continued. All right, I'll accept your offer. Without much hesitation, Zhongxian expressed his agreement. Other than the pinnacle spirit stone, there were also several other reasons why he chose to accept the mission. Firstly, through the shared experiences they would have while trying to obtain the Dongshu Gourd, they should be able to swiftly grow close with one another. And as long as he could take down this future brother-in-law of his, he just might be able to convince the other party to bring him to meet Ruoxin. Of course, from his previous experiences, it was apparent that Luo Shenqing was a siscon. Until they grew sufficiently close enough to one another, it was best for him not to speak of or express any interest in Ruoxin before the latter. Otherwise, all of his efforts could very well be undone. Also, given that he had already been dragged here and learned of such a confidential secret, there was already no room for him to back down. Otherwise, should the news leak out somehow, he would definitely be the first suspect. Good. You are still lacking in strength at the moment, but worry not. I'll protect you, so just follow closely behind me. You just have to make a move when we reach the grade 8 pinnacle formation. Seeing that he had managed to bring Zhongxian to his team, Luo Shenqing heaved a sigh of relief and patted the young man on the shoulder with a peal of hearty laughter. A cost of his domineering attitude in the Sanctum of Sages, he didn't have too many friends. He did know quite a few individuals who were skilled in formations, but he didn't feel safe revealing the existence of the Dongshu Gourd to them. After all, the significance of the Dongshu Gourd was simply too great to Saint 7 Dan cultivators. It would be a disaster if his own teammate were to sabotage him at the last moment. On the other hand, even though Zhongxian possessed extraordinary capability as a formation master, his cultivation wasn't too high and he didn't have a powerful background either. Such a person was easier for him to control, which was the reason why he chose Zhongxian eventually as well. Zhongxian nodded. To be honest, with his current strength, if he were to utilize all of his means, he was confident that he would at least be on par with the rest of the team. But well, it was still best for him to maintain a low profile wherever possible. Otherwise, as awe-inspiring he would be after using all of his trump cards, he would only end up with the others putting their guard against him and his means. That would only put him in an even more dangerous position in the future. Besides, his strongest trump cards weren't really suited to be shown in public either, such as vicious. Since we are going to be working together, allow me to give you a brief introduction of these three's abilities so that we can better collaborate with one another later on. Luo Shenqing said. Bai Hongyin specializes in demonic tunes and formations. You should have seen her prowess for yourself earlier, so I won't elaborate too much about that. Yuan Xiao boasts superior defenses, such that it would be no exaggeration to call him a human shield. As for Yun Lianhai, his fighting prowess is slightly beneath the rest of us, but his from the Sage clan, Yun clan. And as you might know, the Yun clan specializes in seeking out treasures, and they are known around the Master-Teacher continent as a clan of treasure hunters. Treasure hunters? Zhong Xian was taken aback. There's such an occupation in the world. Chapter 1344 The Zhong Clan's Secret One. Indeed. The activation of their bloodline can grant them heightened sensitivity toward treasures, allowing them to perceive the presence of treasures even through obstacles such as formation. Luo Shenqing nodded with a hint of envy in his eyes. For this reason, despite being only a Tier 2 Sage clan, the standing of the Yun clan is not beneath that of the Shui clan and the Mu clan. Cultivators required a huge deal of resources in order to advance their cultivation, and there were countless treasures and ancient domains that had been hidden by old experts using all kinds of mystical means. Just the ability to perceive the presence of treasures through formations was already an ability that would leave countless brimming with envy. Is that considered a unique occupation? Zhong Xian asked in curiosity. Of course not. They are only able to seek out treasures through their bloodline, so it's impossible for them to propagate such an ability to the masses. Luo Shenqing chuckled. I see. Zhong Xian nodded in realization. Kongsha had determined that in order for a certain heritage to be considered a unique occupation, it had to meet two requirements. Firstly, it needed to form a complete, individual system with a perfect heritage. Secondly, it had to be able to be available to the masses, such that most cultivators would be able to learn it. Herbologists met the second requirement, in the sense that most cultivators were able to learn it, but there were simply too many different heritages in order to form a complete and wholesome system. As for the Yun clan, they probably had a complete heritage, but due to their capability being built on a bloodline, ordinary individuals were unable to learn it, so it could not be considered a unique occupation. It seems like there's no way for me to learn it then. Zhong Xian shook his head regretfully. What he lacked at the moment were cultivation resources. If he could gain the ability to perceive the presence of treasures, he would be able to easily gather the resources he required to advance his cultivation. However, since it was only limited to the bloodline of the Yun clan, it seemed like there was no way for him to learn it. As powerful as the Library of Heaven's Path was, there was no way it could allow him to imitate the bloodline ability of others. If it was a unique occupation, there would surely be countless willing to die to learn it. Luo Shenqing nodded. After a moment of chatter, Zhong Xian gained a deeper understanding of the strengths of the group. His future brother-in-law was the strongest of all with a cultivation of Saint Seven Dan Phantasmal Space Realm Pinnacle, followed by Bai Hongyin at Phantasmal Space Realm Advanced Stage. The one who boasted the strongest defensive prowess turned out to possess the weakest offensive power in the group, such that even subduing Yun Lianhai would be a trouble to him. But at the same time, due to his superior defensive prowess, even Luo Shenqing would have trouble defeating him. Alright, let's set off now. After gaining an understanding of each member's strengths and weaknesses, they swiftly got onto the back of the seven-colored divine crane. With a resounding chirp, the divine crane warped into a flash of 7 colors and soared into the horizon. There were no protective formations or structures on the 7-colored divine crane, so there was nothing to guard one against the unrelenting assault of the wind resulting from the swift movement of the divine crane. As Saint Seven Dan experts, Luo Shenqing and the others were unaffected by the wind, but they could not help but be surprised to see that Zhong Xian was completely unfazed by it as well. Even if the young man had made a massive breakthrough to leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle, There should have been a huge gap between his fighting prowess and theirs. To be able to stand steadily before the raging winds despite his lacking cultivation, it was apparent that the young man's astounding talent did not just stop at formations. Given Brother Zhong's deep understanding of formations and decent strength, you must have achieved quite a result in the Mountain Gate examination, right? The shorty, by Lianhai, asked with a rather unnerving grin. The others also directed curious gazes over as well. Most senior students who had reached their level of cultivation had already grown disinterested in the affairs of the freshmen, so very few of them paid heed to the entrance examinations. As a result, despite the huge commotion that Zhongxian had caused, they were completely unaware of it. "I did just all right," Zhongxian replied. "I'm ranked 50th, just enough for me to get into the elite division." "You are 50th? Yun Lianhai was shocked. "Just who in the world is in your cohort? To think that we would have so many formidable freshmen this year." With the level of proficiency in formations the young man before him had, he should have been able to easily get into the top 3. Why would he only be 50th? That was a really dangerous position to be in. The slightest carelessness could have spelt the loss of his candidacy for the elite division. There are indeed quite a few talented students in their cohort. Before Zhongxian could reply, Luo Xianqing had already spoken up. "You should have heard of the Zhong clan's Zhongyu before, right? He's in the same cohort as them." "Zhongyu? You mean the lad who possesses Earth-tier bloodline? I have met him once, and he's indeed a formidable individual. In time to come, there's a good chance that he could reach a level on par with you." "Humph." Luo Xianqing harumphed in displeasure upon hearing those words. "There's no need for you to get so mad at that. Even though there have been many talented individuals among the Zhong clan in recent years, none of them come close to comparing with the little princess of your Luo clan." Yun Lianhai chuckled softly. Speaking of the little princess, a hint of admiration unwittingly crept into the depths of his eyes. Clenching his fists tightly beneath his sleeves, Zhongxian asked with feigned nonchalance, "Brother Yun, is the little princess you speak of the renowned figure who managed to cultivate the dimension silencer?" "Indeed. I'm referring to Xuanqing's younger sister." Paying no heed to Luo Xuanqing's darkened complexion, Yun Lianhai began gossiping enthusiastically. "Speaking of which, Xianqing, I heard that your younger sister has been betrothed to the young prodigy of the Zhong clan since her birth. May I know if that young prodigy is really as talented as everyone makes him out to be?" "Shut your mouth," Luo Xianqing bellowed as he glared at Yun Lianhai with narrowed eyes. "I warned you never to bring up this matter before me, or else don't blame me for getting nasty." The fatty, Yuan Xiao, shrugged nonchalantly at Luo Xuanqing's rage. "Regardless of whether we speak of the matter or not, that is a decision made by the elders of both clans. Your rage won't change anything." As an offspring of the Yuan clan, which was second only to the 3 great sage clans, he was well informed of the matter concerning the betrothal between the little princess of the Luo clan and the young prodigy of the Zhong clan. He knew that the overly affectionate brother was afraid that his younger sister would be unhappy after marrying into the Zhong clan, but as the offspring of one of the strongest sage clans, there were some responsibilities that they simply could not shirk off. Such an important decision was bound to have received the mutual consensus of the elders of both clans. Not even the head of the Luo clan had the power to reverse the decision at this point. "I might not be able to change anything from my side, but I can at least try to pull some strings from the other end. If I ever get my hands on that fellow, I'll definitely pummel him until he backs down from the engagement." Luo Xianqing gnashed his teeth furiously. "Why do you have to make things difficult for yourself?" Yun Lianhai sighed deeply. "If that young prodigy of the Zhong clan is really as great as the legends make him out to be, the purity of his bloodline will be a match for even that of your younger sister." "Do you really think that you'll be a match for him?" Luo Xuanqing's face flushed crimson. As powerful as he was well aware that he came nowhere close to matching his younger sister. Even though his younger sister was more than a decade younger than him, her cultivation and fighting prowess had already reached a level far beyond his. If that young prodigy of the Zhong clan was really a genius of the same caliber as his younger sister, there was no way he would be a match for the other party. At this point, the silent Bai Hongyin suddenly chirped, "Speaking of the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, I happen to have overheard of some secrets surrounding him. Are you all interested in hearing them? Secrets? Everyone quickly turned their gazes over, and even the cold-faced Luo Shenqing pricked up his ears to listen in as well. 20 years ago, my teacher was invited to the Zhong clan as an honorary guest. One night in his accommodation, the head of the Zhong clan suddenly knocked on her door, requesting her to follow him to save someone. Bai Hongyin said with a contemplative look in her eyes, seemingly trying to recall the conversation she had with her teacher back then. The head of the Zhong clan? Are you referring to the Xingmeng sword saint? Yuan Xiao asked with a hint of respect in his voice. Indeed, that's him. Bai Hongyin nodded. Back then, my teacher was extremely perplexed by his actions. As a demonic tunist, she wasn't adept in treating and curing others, so it was bewildering to her why the head of the Zhong clan would suddenly request her presence. However, as soon as she saw the patient, the answer was immediately apparent to her. The person who was ill was an infant. My teacher couldn't tell whether the infant was poisoned or what, but his soul was in an extremely feeble state, about to dissipate at any moment. The Xingmeng sword saint wanted my teacher to play a demonic tune to stabilize his soul. The crowd nodded. Demonic tunes could crumble a person's mental fortitude and destroy their mind, but at the same time, it could also reinforce one's soul and induce a significant rise in one's cultivation. It would be unwise to feed medicine to a weak infant, so in such a scenario, it was indeed much more suitable to engage the help of a demonic tunist than a physician. My teacher agreed to make a move, but the effects weren't too pronounced. Nevertheless, the Xingmeng sword saint still compensated my teacher handsomely for her assistance. Following that, my teacher was escorted out of the residence, and she has no idea what happened to the infant afterward. Coming to a realization, Yuan Xiao could not help but ask, "Are you trying to say that the infant that your teacher treated back then is likely the young prodigy of the Zhong clan?" Well, there's no way to tell for sure anymore, but considering how coincidental the timing was and the fact that the Xingmeng sword saint invited my teacher over personally. But thinking again, given how the young prodigy was assessed to possess unmatched purity in his bloodline even when he was still in his mother's womb, there should be no doubt that the Zhong clan would devote all of its resources into protecting him. It's unthinkable that anyone would be able to breach the tight defenses of the Zhong clan and harm him, Bai Hongyin analyzed with a confused frown. My teacher didn't think too much into the matter then, but since that encounter then, it seems like no one has seen the young prodigy in public. Thus, she couldn't help but harbor some doubts about the matter. If nothing was wrong with the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, how could he have hidden from the sight of the world for 20 whole years? Not to mention, to even opt against enrolling into the sanctum of sages? There were indeed too many doubts shrouding the young prodigy that one could not help but think deeper into. If the person whom your teacher treated 20 years back was truly the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, that would mean that someone severely injured him shortly after he was born. It's really hard to believe something like that to be true. Yuan Xiao frowned. As offspring of sage clans, they knew how protective their clans were toward offspring who possessed the purest of bloodlines. This was the first offspring in the several dozen millenniums history of the Zhong clan to possess a bloodline comparable to their founder, so how could they possibly allow anyone to harm him right after his birth? Zhong Xian could not help but ask, could it be the work of internal rivalry within the Zhong clan? If the person who was severely ill back then was truly the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, that would truly be for the best. Naturally, the worse state the young prodigy was in, the more unworthy he was of marrying Luo Ruoxin. Impossible. A sage clan like the Zhong clan pays particular heed to its reputation and prestige. There's no way internal strife or anything of that sort could happen in their midst. The one who spoke up was Luo Shenqing. As a genius of the Luo clan, he was deeply aware of how sage clans operated. But just because the Zhong clan pays particular heed to its reputation and prestige doesn't mean that it's impossible for such a thing to happen. Who knows? There might just be an ambitious elder who would attempt to assassinate the young prodigy out of desire for the position of clan head. As a librarian in his previous life, Zhong Xian had read plenty of books and stories. This was a common plot in most family strife. Before Luo Shenqing could speak, Yuan Xiao shook his head and replied, "You aren't from a sage clan, so you aren't aware of the rules that govern us." I can tell you very clearly right now that the situation you have proposed is impossible to happen. Impossible to happen? Zhongxian blinked in incomprehension. Power could blind the eyes of others, and not even 9-star master teachers were infallible to that, let alone the elders of the sage clans. How could anyone guarantee that it was impossible for such a thing to happen? There was bound to be a reason such a plotline became a cliché. Seeing the look of confusion on Zhongxian's face, Yuan Xiao shook his head once more. You might not be able to comprehend it if I explain it from our perspective, so why don't I phrase it this way instead? You should know that there's a sanctum head to our sanctum of sages, right? Chapter 1345 The Zhong Clan's Secret 2 I do. Zhongxian nodded. Not only was he aware of that there was a sanctum head to the sanctum of sages, he was also the only candidate in line for that position. There's a set of unique selection criteria in order to decide one's eligibility to become the sanctum head. Those who are unqualified will not be able to inherit the heritage of the sanctum of sages. You should have heard of this too, right? Yuan Xiao asked. Zhongxian nodded in response. In order to become the head of the sanctum of sages, one must possess the eye of insight, be a master teacher, have an upright, humble, and low-profile personality, be of noble character, and possess dashing looks that were second to none and charisma that could capture the hearts of others. It was only after clearing all of that criteria that Sage Kuei finally bestowed the sanctum head token to him. Without achieving those factors, there was no way he would have been a candidate for the position of sanctum head. Such is the same for the heads of sage clans. Only those whose bloodline has reached a certain level of purity are qualified to become the next head of the clan. One can't just claim authority within the sage clan on the basis of strength alone. Take the current head of the Zhong clan for example. In fact, the Xingmeng Sword Saint is only the standing clan head of the Zhong clan at the moment. The real clan head is the young prodigy. In the past several millenniums, he's the only one whose bloodline has reached the level of purity necessary to become the head of the Zhong clan, Yuan Xiao said. The same goes for the Luo clan as well. Even though brother Shenqing possesses a pure bloodline as well, it's still insufficient for him to inherit the position of the clan head. The real head of the Luo clan is his younger sister. It's just that his younger sister is still too young at the moment, so everything is still being managed by the elders for the time being. Zhongxian came to a realization. The situation in the sage clans was indeed rather similar to his current circumstances. Even though the Sanctum of Sages had a deputy sanctum head who was managing the affairs for the time being, once Zhongxian broke the seal on the sanctum head token and became the real sanctum head, there would be no one who could steal his position from him. This was the rule that Kongsha had set, and this was in accordance with the virtue of propriety that Kongsha had preached. No one would dare undermine Kongsha's ideology, especially not in a place where his heritage was passed down. Otherwise, the public would immediately turn against that person, and that person would be criticized and insulted for their immoral actions for many years to come. So, it's impossible for any clan member of a sage clan to turn against the incumbent clan head in an attempt to wrestle power away from him. Not to mention, with the sheer purity of the bloodline that the young prodigy possesses, his maturity will only bring the Zhong clan to greater heights in terms of power, bringing every single member greater honor and prestige. Just who would be so foolish as to foil their own future by harming the young prodigy? Yuan Xiao explained. Ah! Zhongxian scratched his head in embarrassment. He really did not think that even the powerful sage clans would be restrained by so many conventions. If everything that Yuan Xiao had said was true, it was indeed not too likely for anyone to have assaulted the young prodigy of the Zhong clan. I heard this secret from my teacher many years ago, and to be honest, I can't verify whether the details are exactly as I remembered them or not. Bai Hongyin shook her head. Furthermore, for a clan as big as the Zhong clan, there would at least be several thousand infants who are born in the same year, and we can't discount the possibility that the infant my teacher encountered is a child of the Xingmeng Sword Saint's friend. With over several dozen millenniums of history behind it, the Zhong clan had already grown to become a massive empire by itself. The population of the entire clan was so numerous that it was impossible to count all of them, and the family structure of both the main family and the side family had grown incredibly complicated. Each year, The clan would usher in several thousand new members, so there was no way to ascertain for sure that the person whom Bai Hongyin's teacher had treated was definitely the young prodigy. Furthermore, it was a ridiculous notion to think that a peerless genius that the Zhong clan had never seen before ever since the time of its founder would actually be left on the verge of death not too long after his birth. That's true. Everyone nodded. All right, let's not discuss the Zhong clan anymore. Knowing that it would be pointless to talk about this matter, especially since they had no way of verifying it anymore, Bai Hongyin turned her gaze to Luo Shenqing and asked, "Brother Luo, I heard that the little princess left the Sanctum of Sages a while ago. Has she returned yet?" Upon hearing those words, Zhong Xian's eyes immediately lit up, and he anxiously turned his gaze to Luo Shenqing. Her words eroded all grudge and anger Zhong Xian had felt toward her, leaving nothing but gratitude instead. "She has long returned," Luo Shenqing replied with a slight nod. "She has returned? Wonderful. If there's a chance, do bring me to meet her. Despite being fellow students of the Inner Sanctum, I still haven't got a chance to meet her yet," Bai Hongyin said excitedly. Even though it had been 2 years since the little princess arrived in the Sanctum of Sages and she had left behind countless records as well, there actually were not too many people who had truly met her before. There were only countless rumors of her floating around in the Sanctum of Sages, some praising her unparalleled beauty and others in awe of her talent. She has been in seclusion ever since her return, desperately cultivating non-stop as if she has offended someone powerful. Even I am unable to meet with her, let alone others. Luo Shenqing shook his head and sighed deeply. Desperately cultivating non-stop? But she's already so powerful. Zhong Xian exclaimed beneath his breath as he felt a sharp pain stabbing into his chest. Back at the Qiuwu Palace, the young lady had hesitated for a very long while before accepting his confession. Most likely, she had known then that it would be difficult for her to go against the engagement, and it was unlikely that there would be a happy ending for the both of them. Nevertheless, she still courageously took a leap of faith and accepted him. But this acceptance came at a price. It would mean that she would have to defy the orders of the elders of her clan, and in order to do so, she had no choice but to desperately immerse herself in her cultivation in the hope that she could soon wield the strength to dictate her fate. Otherwise, she could only be swept along by the pace of others. Noticing the huge fluctuations in Zhong Xian's emotions, Luo Shenqing shot a narrowed glance over. "You seem to be very interested in my younger sister." For a moment there, Zhong Xian thought of coming clean and telling him, "Your younger sister has already agreed to become my girlfriend." But at the last moment, he eventually abandoned the idea. Putting aside whether Luo Shenqing would be able to believe his words or not, even if the other party did, this matter would only turn in a catastrophe. Just thinking about it, the fiancé of the young prodigy of the Zhong clan had fallen in love with an unaffiliated cultivator with a humble background. That was bound to cause a huge uproar, and if things went wrong, he might even be putting more on Luo Ruoxin's plate for her to deal with. She was already cultivating hard for their future together, so naturally, he could not possibly allow a moment of recklessness to drag her down. "Just wait till I break the seal and become the real sanctum head of the Sanctum of Sages. With such a position, no one will dare underestimate me anymore." Zhong Xian took in a deep breath and suppressed his agitation. What was more important for him at the moment was to cultivate humbly and strive to break the seal on the Sanctum Head token as soon as possible. He did not fear trouble, but it would be unforgivable if he caused more trouble for Luo Ruoxin in the midst of doing so. Driving his state of mind, Zhong Xian swiftly returned to a state of composure before replying with a smile, "The fame of the little princess has spread far and wide. I heard of her affairs back when I was still in the Qingyuan Empire, and to be honest, I have nothing but praise and admiration for her. That's why I can't help but be rather curious about her affairs." "Humph, that'd better be the case. If I learn that you harbor any kind of thoughts toward my younger sister, even though we are acquainted with one another, rest assured that I'll pummel you to the point that you won't even be able to recognize which way's up." Luo Shenqing harumphed with a voice dripping with threat. Of course, of course." Zhong Xian nodded with a bitter smile. To be threatened by his future brother-in-law. Just what was this? At the same time, he felt incredibly glad that he had stopped himself from blabbering earlier, or else he could very well have been lying on the ground, bruised all over. "All right, Let's not talk about that anymore. After chuckling softly, Yoon Lianhai changed the topic. Right, Zhongshe. In your cohort, other than Zhongyu, there's another student who possesses incredible talent despite not being from any sage clan. If I recall correctly, his name should be Fengzi. Do you know him? Fengzi? I know of him. He's the person who was ranked in first place for the Mountain Gate examination this time around. Zhongshen nodded. According to what I know, he seems to be the direct disciple of one of the Grand Elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Indeed. There is a total of 3 Grand Elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, and their whereabouts are usually a mystery. To be able to become one of their direct disciples, I must say that Fengzi's luck is really good. On top of that, the person who took him in is the person who is the strongest of the 3 Grand Elders. Yangshe. Yoon Lianhai remarked in envy. Yangshe? That familiar name made Zhongshen instinctively turn his gaze toward Yoon Lianhai. Indeed. Yangshe, Yangshen. Yoon Lianhai replied. Yang. Shen. Zhongshen's body stiffened. Chapter 1346 Killing in 10. All along, Zhongshen had been introducing himself as Yang Shen's disciple. He did not think there would be really such a figure since it was a name that he had come up with, but to think that there would actually be such a huge coincidence. To think that there would actually be a master teacher named Yang Shen in the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, and he was even one of the 3 Grand Elders. Just how lucky did he have to be to meet with such a coincidence? It was no wonder Luo Chengshan panicked upon meeting and hearing the name Yang Shen. It was not that he had impersonated Yang Shen well, there was really such a person in real life. That was why the other party was horrified and panicked. Throughout his journey, as long as he reported Yang Shen's name, the Master Teacher Pavilion would immediately suppress all news concerning him. Most likely, they had seen that it involved one of the 3 Grand Elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and decided that it would be best for them to keep out of the matter. So that's the reason. He had thought that his disguise was so good that he managed to fool everyone into thinking that he had a powerful backer, and that was why no one dared to lay their hands on his Heaven's Path divine art and Heaven's Path techniques. But it turned out that there was really a Yang Shen in the world. Everything had only gone smoothly for him because he had borrowed the other party's reputation to bolster his authority. How can there be such a huge coincidence in the world? Zhongshen could hardly accept this fact all of a sudden. He knew that it was only on a whim that he came up with his Yang Shen persona, and it was simply too much of a coincidence for the persona he had created to actually be a real person. Could it be the Library of Heaven's Path? Zhongshen thought in alarm as he dived his consciousness into his mind. He returned to the entrance of the Library of Heaven's Path and stared at the 4 words inscribed on the plaque above the massive gates. They emanated an aura of ancient history, reminiscent of an artifact that had lived through the eons, traversing from world to world. It was hard to describe the sensation that those words evoked, but the closest phrase that he could think of was the solemnity of age. Perhaps, this might be what they mean by the threads of destiny. There's a certain trajectory that the world gravitates toward under the will of the heavens. Even a decision made seemingly at a whim could have far greater implications than one can ever imagine, Zhongshen thought as his body tensed up. He had no idea why he would feel like that, but his intuition was telling him that this matter was far more than a coincidence. Perhaps, the Library of Heaven's Path might have even influenced his subconscious mind to mouth out those 2 words. He suddenly felt like the will of the heavens was omnipresent, and it was gradually guiding him along the road it wanted him to tread on. The authority of the heavens is inviolable, the will of the heavens is absolute. Zhongshen suddenly felt a shiver run through his body as a possibility came to his mind. I might control the Library of Heaven's Path, but what if the heavens want to destroy me one day? Will I be completely helpless then too? Zhongshe. What's wrong? Just as Zhongshen's thoughts were wandering, a voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Lifting his gaze, he saw Yoon Lianhai looking at him with a worried expression. Zhongshen quickly suppressed his apprehensions and fears and replied with a smile. I'm fine. For someone of his state of mind, it was not too difficult for him to conceal his emotions from the eyes of others. The Library of Heaven's Path was his greatest secret, and he could not allow anyone to learn of its existence. I was just surprised to hear that Feng Zi would have such a background. Zhongxian scratched his head awkwardly. Indeed. I was almost as shocked as you when I first heard of the news. The Grand Elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters were deeply elusive figures, and each one of them was more secretive than the others. Yun Lianhai nodded before leaning forward with a look of curiosity. Right, Zhongshe. Someone as young and talented as you should also have a capable teacher, right? May I ask who your teacher is? The fact that the other party was not from the Zhong clan and yet possessed cultivation on par with the geniuses of the Zhong clan was more than enough to tell that he had the backing of a strong teacher. Hearing those words, Zhongxian's lips twitched. If it had been in the past, he would have unhesitatingly replied, "My teacher is Yang Xian." However, with Yang Xian's real direct disciple, Feng Zi, being in the sanctum of sages, it would only be a matter of time before his lie was exposed if he said such word. Noting Zhongxian's silence, Yun Lianhai quickly waved his hand to shrug the matter off. It's fine if it's inconvenient for you to answer my question. I know that there are some old hermits out there who dislike their students using their name to brag before others, so there's no need to worry. He had only intended it to be a casual question. If the other party felt uncomfortable replying to that, he had no intention of pressing for a response. After all, everyone had their own secrets, and it was not like they were close friends. It was understandable that the other party harbored some reservations about revealing his background to him. Zhongxian clasped his fist. Thank you for your understanding. It's nothing, Yun Lianhai replied with a smile. The group chatted for a while longer before dispersing to do their own things. Zhongxian calmed down his unnerved heart before sitting on the ground to reinforce his newfound strength. It was meaningless for the current him to think about matters that were too far ahead. It was not as if he could make a difference in this moment anyway. The best thing he could do at the moment was quickly raise his strength in preparation of what was to come. Ultimately, there was nothing to rely on but cold, hard strength. In silence, the group swiftly advanced toward their destination. During this period of time, Zhongxian had tried to sound Yuan Xiao out for some news regarding Yuan Dao, but as Yuan Xiao had not returned back to the Yuan clan over the past year, he did not know too much about the genius who had recently returned to their clan. In response to that, Zhongxian could only sigh deeply in disappointment. It was 5 days later that the 7-colored divine crane finally arrived at a meandering mountain range, which extended as far as the eye could see. After the past few days of hard work, Zhongxian had managed to fully reinforce his cultivation. He was not able to make any breakthroughs without the relevant cultivation technique manuals and spirit stones on hand, but having adapted to his power, his fighting prowess still grew a fair amount. If Jian Qinsheng were to challenge him with his strength lowered to 100th once more, there was a very good chance that Zhongxian would be able to kill him before he could even react to his move. The Dongshu gourd is hidden over there. Luo Shenqing gestured to the area beneath him as he instructed the 7-colored divine crane to stop near a valley. Turning their gazes downward, the crowd saw a long gorge that slithered through the vicinity like a gigantic anaconda. It was conspicuous from where they were currently situated, but had they been anywhere else, their sight would have definitely been impeded by the towering mountain cliffs all around, causing them to overlook this gorge. A land that naturally harnesses wind and water, it's the type of terrain where spirit veins tend to form, Zhongxian noted internally. With his knowledge as an 8-star pinnacle formation master, he could tell that the gorge beneath them was the center line that connected the entire mountain range together, thus forming a natural deposit of spiritual energy. But on second look, a frown emerged on his forehead. However, it seems like someone has altered the terrain in a manner that prevents its spirit mines from developing. Places where spiritual energy tended to gather, such as the gorge beneath them, would usually result in the development of spirit mines over time. Zhongxian could not tell for sure whether it was due to someone's intentional action or some sort of natural fault, but the earth veins beneath had been completely destroyed. While they could still gather the surrounding spiritual energy, it had already become physically impossible for spirit mines to form. While Zhongxian was still analyzing the situation contemplatively, Luo Shenqing said, "Let's head down," following which, the divine crane began descending, and before long, the group was standing at the entrance to the valley. This place is called the Valley of Earth Spirits. Due to the rich spiritual energy harnessed within this area, there are many saint beasts who choose to reside in this area, and there's no lack of Saint 8 Dan experts among their ranks. As such, we can't afford to fly straight in. Otherwise, if we catch the attention of any Saint 8 Dan beasts, there's a good chance that we'll lose our lives here, Luo Shenqing explained grimly. Hearing those words, Zhongxian was astonished. The seven-colored divine crane was already the strongest saint beast that he had seen so far, but to think that there would be plenty of beasts that were stronger than it within the valley. The master-teacher continent was far larger than he had thought, and there were countless experts hidden all over the world. It would be foolish of him to gauge it by what he had seen so far. But thinking again, if not for the powerful saint beasts guarding the valley, it would be impossible for the Dongshu Gourd to remain undiscovered for such a long period of time. Try your best to rein in your aura when we enter later on, make sure not to leave any traces behind. Otherwise, we could very well meet with trouble even before arriving at our destination, Luo Shenqing instructed solemnly. He then moved on to instruct the divine crane to keep a lookout for them from afar and cover them should any unexpected situations happen before leading the way into the valley. The remaining members of the group quickly followed suit. Due to Zhongxian's cultivation being the lowest of the group, he was positioned at the center so that they could protect him should any unexpected situation arise. The gorge was unnervingly calm. Stepping in, all they could hear was the moaning of the wind flitting through the gorge. The spiritual energy within the gorge was indeed considerably more concentrated than the rest of the mountain range, but due to the deficiencies in the terrain, it was impossible to concentrate the spiritual energy at one point. Nevertheless, it was still a decent area to cultivate in. Following closely behind Luo Shenqing, Zhongxian warily assessed his surroundings with his eye of insight. He could see surges of spiritual energy slowly flowing forward peacefully like a stream. Is such an environment really sufficient to fuel the growth of the Dongshu Gourd? The more Zhongxian studied his surroundings, the more perplexed he became. He was not too sure what requirements the Dongshu Gourd needed to be in to mature well, but according to what Luo Shenqing had said, it could only grow in the presence of a spirit vein. There was indeed a spirit vein flowing through the gorge, but the deficiency in the terrain had weakened it so much that he felt hesitant to call it a spirit vein anymore. Perhaps noticing the doubtful look on Zhongxian's face, Luo Shenqing sent a telepathic message over. Actually, we are already in the midst of the formation that ancient experts set up. We are already in the midst of a formation? Zhongxian was astonished. Given that he had already mastered the 8-star Heaven's Path formation art, there was no way he could not have realized that they were standing in the midst of a formation, unless the formation had reached grade 9, a grade 9 formation. Just how powerful was the ancient expert who had left behind the Dongshu Gourd? That's right. This formation serves to alter the flow of the spiritual energy in the surroundings, rendering it impossible for one to find the real spirit vein and locate the Dongshu Gourd. If not for this, the Dongshu Gourd would have long been harvested by someone else. Luo Shenqing explained. It's also out of sheer luck that I managed to find this place. Luck? Zhongxian shook his head. It would have been hard to discover this with luck alone. Even he was unable to notice any anomaly in the surroundings with his eye of insight activated. The notion that one would discover the possible presence of a Dongshu Gourd in the area based on sheer luck itself was improbable. Well, to be honest with you, I heard of this matter from my younger sister. Reading is a huge hobby of hers, and she loves to put clues together to make deductions about the various places, Luo Shenqing remarked proudly. Through a certain formation and a detailed map of the entire mountain range, she deduced that there's a high chance that there is a grade 9 hidden formation located in this region, and I took note of it back then. After which, I came to examine this area carefully, and as expected, there was indeed something amiss about this gorge. Several dozen millenniums was a very long duration, even with the long lifespan of cultivators. If it was possible to find this location on sheer luck, someone would have found the Dongshu Gourd long ago. It was only with the help of his ridiculously talented younger sister that he was able to zone in on this gorge. Your younger sister was able to deduce all of this with just a formation and a map in hand. Zhongxian was shocked. As expected of his girlfriend, Her eye of discernment and analytical prowess were indeed nowhere weaker than his. Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before sending another telepathic message. Right. Brother Luo, I have something that I am really curious about that I would like to ask you. Feel free to speak, Luo Shenqing said with a slight nod of his head. I was wondering, given how powerful the Luo clan is there really a need for the little princess, the head of the Luo clan, to be betrothed to the young prodigy of the Zhong clan? Zhongxian asked with a frown. This was something that had been plaguing his mind over the past few days. The purity of one's bloodline determined one's standing in the sage clans. Since Luo Ruoxin was the head of the Luo clan, was there really a need to go to the point of forcing her to marry the young prodigy of the Zhong clan? Was that not equivalent to entrusting their entire clan to the hands of the Zhong clan? Luo Xuanqing's face darkened upon hearing those words, and he uttered with a dangerous edge to his voice, "Who told you to ask such a question?" In an instant, Zhongxian felt a surge of cold air pressing up toward him as overwhelming killing intent pressed down on him. Spirit veins are similar to ley lines, somewhat similar to underground rivers where spiritual energy tends to gather. Whereas spirit mines are places where spiritual energy crystallizes to form spirit stones, presumably requiring the presence of certain conditions such as high temperature and high pressure, similar to how most other ores are formed. Chapter 1347 Zhongxian, the Formation Master. This killing intent was so powerful that it felt palpable, permeating through his skin and into his soul, causing his body to stiffen uncontrollably. With eyes narrowed in alarm, Zhongxian's mind swiftly whirred into action. This was not the first time he had asked about Luo Ruoxin's affairs, but back then, Luo Shenqing had not shown such an agitated response to his question. Could there really be some kind of secret involved? As if oblivious to the threatening aura that Luo Shenqing was emanating, Zhongxian replied with an innocent smile, "I just find the matter rather bewildering." Luo Shenqing stared at Zhongxian intently, as if trying to find any facet in his words. However, all he saw was an earnest smile from an honest man, so he eventually released the killing intent that he was emanating with a harumph and coldly said, "This is a matter between our Luo clan and the Zhong clan. As an outsider, you shouldn't get too involved in this matter." Understood. Yes, Brother Luo. Zhongxian nodded. Luo Shenqing might not have said anything at all, but his very response told Zhongxian a very important fact: the two clans were determined to go through with the betrothal by hook or by crook, and no one would be able to stop them. It was apparent to all how doting and protective Luo Shenqing was of his younger sister, as well as how much he abhorred the Zhong clan, but even so, he was still unable to do anything to terminate the engagement between both clans. Most likely, there were other factors that made it critical that the engagement carried on as planned. This is really a huge dilemma. Zhongxian rubbed his glabella in distress. His previous thought was that as long as he could become the sanctum head of the Sanctum of Sages, he would be in a position not beneath that of the head of the Zhong clan. On top of that, given that Luo Ruoxin and he were in love, there should have been a good chance that he would be able to gain the approval of the Luo clan. However, it seemed like there was a need to reassess the current situation now. Despite being the head of the Luo clan and possessing extraordinary strength, she was still unable to struggle free from the engagement she had with the Zhong clan. He would really have to look into this matter when he got back. Woo-woo. While Zhongxian was still deep in thought, a sound similar to the buzzing of a group of mosquitoes suddenly echoed through the air. Bai Hongyan narrowed her eyes and exclaimed with a hushed voice, "Crimson tail wasp." Shortly after Bai Hongyan's exclamation, an entire legion of wasps, each roughly around the size of a longan, suddenly pressed in their direction in the form of an ominous, black cloud. Crimson tail wasps. Zhongxian's heart skipped a beat after hearing those words. This saint beast was detailed in some of the beast tamer books that he had read. The crimson tail wasp was small, and its strength was not too frightening, typically being only at Saint 3 Dan to Saint 4 Dan. However, what was frightening about it was the potent poison it carried on its sting. In a group, even a Saint 7 Dan expert could easily be poisoned to death in a moment of carelessness. What was worse was that they tended to hide within mountain forests in legions. In a sense, they were even more frightening than Saint 8 Dan beasts. The killing intent that Luo Shenqing released earlier has alarmed them. Zhongxian swiftly realized what was going on. They had concealed themselves really well ever since entering the mountain valley, keeping their auras tightly reined in within their bodies. Under normal circumstances, they should have been able to bypass the detection of most saint beasts, and yet, a legion of crimson-tail wasps was suddenly heading their way. Most likely, the crimson-tail wasps had felt threatened by the earlier burst of killing intent and decided to seek out and kill the source of the threat. Looking at the fearsome cloud of wasps heading in their direction, Yun Lianhai's face suddenly turned ghastly pale. What should we do? It was a rather unnatural reaction for an expert of his caliber. It seemed like he had an innate fear toward life forms that carried poison in them. We'll cause too much of a commotion if we engage the crimson-tail wasps in a battle, and that would likely draw in even more powerful foes. More importantly, there are simply too many crimson-tail wasps. Putting aside the question of whether we'll be able to eliminate all of them or not, crimson-tail wasps have a group defensive mechanism that prompts it to release poison clouds upon their death. Once the poison clouds build up to a certain concentration, we'll be doomed as well. Bai Hongyin swiftly analyzed the situation for the group. The crimson-tail wasps were the very enemies that they feared encountering in the valley. The crimson-tail wasps were currently standing in their way from advancing deeper into the valley, but killing them was not an option, and there was no way they would be able to circumvent the entire legion safely. It was truly a helpless situation they were in. There's no choice, let's just retreat out of the valley and find a way to get rid of them outside, Luo Shenqing instructed decisively. As a member of the Luo clan's main family, as well as a future leader of the Luo clan, Luo Shenqing definitely was not as rash and hot-headed as he appeared on the surface. In times of adversity, he would weigh his options rationally and make the most logical choice on the spot. Very well. Knowing that this was the best course of action they could take, the group immediately began retreating. After fleeing barely several hundred meters, with a shake of his head, Zhongxian remarked, "It doesn't seem like we'll be able to make it in time." Following which, another legion of crimson-tail wasps suddenly appeared right in front of them with a resounding buzzing noise that left one with goosebumps. As Saint 3 Dan to 4 Dan beasts, there was no doubt that the crimson-tail wasps possessed intelligence. It was not easy for a meal to walk onto their plate, so they had made preparations beforehand to corner their prey. There's no other choice. Knowing that a fight was inevitable, Luo Shenqing roared, "Prepare for battle. Zhongshe, I'll be counting on you to set up an aura isolation barrier to prevent the shockwaves or sounds from the battle from leaking into the surroundings. Bai Hongyin, use your demonic tunes to hinder their communication so that they won't be able to arrange themselves in formations and collaborate with one another. Yun Lianhai, use your secret art to determine the whereabouts of the Wasp King. Yuan Xiao, your body boasts the highest defensive capability and immunity to poison, so I'll need you to follow me later on to strike down the Wasp King. Once the Wasp King is killed, the remaining crimson-tail wasps would fall into confusion. We can make use of the opportunity to escape." The crowd nodded grimly. Yes. Hearing how concise and rational Luo Xuanqing's commands were, each of them aimed right at the flaws of the enemies, Zhongxian could not help but nod in approval. Were it to be anyone else in his position, they would have already lost their nerve. However, not only was Luo Shenqing able to remain perfectly calm, he was even able to instantaneously capitalize on everyone's strengths to craft the ideal plan to cope with the danger they were facing. The geniuses groomed by the Sanctum of Sages were indeed on a whole new level, reacting completely differently from the others in times of danger. After seeing that everyone had received his commands, Luo Shenqing bellowed, "Move." At the same time, he lifted his hand and closed his palm. As if falling under his control, the surrounding space suddenly turned incredibly viscous, and even the slightest of movements would be met with the greatest of resistance. "Zhongshe, I'll fend off the wasps for the time being, but I won't be able to last too long like that, so I need you to set up the formation as soon as possible." "I understand, just that." A hint of embarrassment suddenly surfaced on Zhongxian's previously solemn face, and he looked at the group around him awkwardly. "Do any of you have grade 8 formation flags?" He had cleared the 8-star formation master examination just 1 day ago, and he had not had time to purchase any grade 8 formation flags yet, if he could afford some in the first place, that was. "You don't even have any formation flags?" Bai Hongyin face twitched upon hearing those words. The expert formation master whom Luo Shenqing had specially invited into their group actually had no formation flags at all. The other members of the group could not help but feel a little lightheaded. Their journey had barely started, but everything was already looking so grim. Here, take mine. Exhaling deeply in frustration, Bai Hongyin flicked her wrist and threw roughly 500 to 600 formation flags over to Zhongxian. As one who specialized in formations, it was a given that she would bring large quantities of formation flags wherever she went in case of emergencies. Of course, considering that she was a genius from the demonic tunist guild, there was no questioning their quality too. Thank you. Zhongxian swiftly grabbed all of those flags as he drove his zhengqi. Su su su. The next moment, the flags flew out in all direction. You. Seeing how Zhongxian tossed all of the flags out without even giving them a second look, Bai Hongyin's face flushed scarlet in fury. I only have that many flags. If you throw all of them out at once and fail to form a formation, we'll have no choice but to force our way through using brute. But before she could finish her sentence, a huge congregation of mist suddenly settled into the surroundings. A formation had been successfully formed and activated. Grade 8 Aura Isolation Formation, typically used to prevent any noise, shockwaves, or any sort of intangible disturbances from traveling in and out of the formation. This is already done. Bai Hongyin gulped in awe, but that hardly helped alleviate the hoarseness in her throat. Not only was she in such a state, even Yun Lianhai and Yuan Xiao were completely dumbstruck as well. Even though Luo Shenqing had showered plenty of praise upon Zhongxian about how swift he was in setting up formations, the sight before them was still too inconceivable. It was simply beyond the limits of their imagination. To complete a grade 8 formation within less than a breath. Could 9-star formation masters even set up a grade 8 formation that quickly? After all, setting up a formation was a very complex business. It involved analyzing the surrounding geographical terrain, environment, strength of the opponent, diffusion of power, and many other factors. Yet, to finish it in the blink of an eye without even assessing any of those conditions, or was his mind capable of processing all of that complex information in an instant? Recalling that they were still in the midst of a battle, Bai Hongyin swiftly shook herself out of her shock and whipped out her zither, preparing to play an offensive demonic tune. However, she suddenly realized something then, and she widened her eyes in astonishment. Wait a moment, this formation doesn't seem to have just concealed our presence, it seems to harness the effects of a beguilement formation as well. Look, those crimson-tail wasps are clearly in a disorientated state, traveling aimlessly around the area. To her shock, she realized that the formation did not just isolate their presence from the rest of the world. It seemed to be trapping all of the crimson-tail wasps within it as well, not allowing even a single one of them to escape. This was extremely significant to their current situation. If even a single crimson-tail wasp got away, they could possibly draw the powerful saint beasts in the valley over to save their comrades. Oh, you gave me quite a few flags there. There were still some remaining after I finished the Aura Isolation Formation, so I compounded a beguilement formation while I was at it, Zhongxian replied with a cheery smile. You compounded a beguilement formation while you were at it? Everyone's cheeks convulsed wildly after hearing how casually Zhongxian spoke of the matter. Within a short span of less than a breath, that fellow actually set up 2 formations. And as if that was not enough, the both of them were compounded upon one another. Overlapping 2 formations on top of one another was a task that was many times more complicated than just setting up just a single formation. Many more variables and factors had to be taken into account when making the calculations. Even expert formation masters would have to spend several months working with multiple compasses in hand, and yet, that fellow was actually able to achieve it on a whim. Bai Hongyin felt a searing pain on her cheeks, as if someone had just dealt a tight slap to her face. She was considered a genius formation master as well, but compared to the other party, she felt like she was not anything at all. It was almost as if she was a complete amateur standing before a professional. Yun Lianhai also quickly shook himself out of his shocked state before asking, with this beguilement formation, those crimson-tail wasps shouldn't be able to get away. With that, we shouldn't have to fight them anymore, right? This The others were dazed for a moment before hurriedly nodding in agreement. Indeed. Their goal was not to kill these crimson-tail wasps but to bypass them so that they would not hinder the group from finding the Dongshu gourd. Since they were already trapped by the beguilement formation, there was no reason for them to fight anymore. They could just walk away, and the disoriented and trapped crimson-tail wasps would not be able to stop them. That won't do. Luo Shenqing shook his head and said, a formation that is set up on a whim won't have sufficient spiritual energy to sustain it for too long. Soon, it will run out of energy and deactivate. We might be able to get away from them now, but if we encounter them once more in the depths of the valley, we'll be in a far more dangerous position. Formations required a constant input of spiritual energy in order to remain active. This was similar to how a carriage required a horse to drive it. Once the horse ran out of strength, the carriage would not remain moving for long. The beguilement formation might have been able to last for quite a while if it was only trapping 1 or 2 crimson-tail wasps, but there was an entire legion of them in here. Under their furious thrashing, the beguilement formation would only deplete its spiritual energy faster than ever. By Luo Xuanqing's estimate, it should be collapsing very soon. Rather than be placed into an even more dangerous situation later on, it would be much wiser for them to get rid of the threat then and there, while they still had the upper hand. Run out of energy? Brother Luo, that won't be a problem. I also noticed that problem while I was setting up the formation earlier, so I compounded a spirit-gathering formation on top of that. With the spirit-gathering formation drawing in the surrounding spiritual energy to fuel the other formations, I think it should have no trouble running for several hundred years. Zhongxian quickly clarified. You even compounded a spirit-gathering formation on top of that. The others staggered upon hearing those words. They quickly turned their gazes over to assess the formation, and indeed, it was as sturdy and stable as it could get. It seemed like there was an endless source of spiritual energy fueling its power depletion. The crowd felt as if their minds had just blown up. A triple compounded formation, and finished in a breath at that. Brother, are you high? It took a long while before the deeply stifled Luo Shenqing was able to find his words once more. Since that's the case, it should be safe for us to leave then. He had prepared so many contingency plans, but in the end, he did not get a chance to use any of them at all. Just by throwing out a pile of flags, the young man had already resolved the crisis they were facing. This left him with a crushing feeling of defeat. Leave. Isn't it a huge waste to leave behind so many formation flags? Zhongxian blinked in confusion. These formation flags were of top-notch quality, and every single one of them was worth a bomb. It would be too wasteful to toss away such a huge fortune here. What other choice do we have? These crimson-tail wasps produce poison clouds upon their death. Even if we manage to slaughter every last one of them, we'll also suffer heavy damage, Luo Shenqing said with a frown. Heavy damage? Why would that be the case? There were still some spare formation flags after setting up those 3 formations, so I decided to add in a slaughter formation. It will activate automatically once the formation gathers sufficient spiritual energy. All we have to do is wait here, Zhongxian replied with the same cheery smile. Chapter 1348 I am a physician. There were no words that could describe the shock that the other members of the group were feeling. In fact, they might even have started to feel numb to it already. There was an exponential rise in the difficulty for each additional formation overlapped on a compounded formation. Even the most talented of 8-star formation masters that they knew of would require a minimum of 4 months to set up the most basic grade 8 double compounded formation and 16 months for the most basic triple compounded formation. As for a quadruple compounded formation, without at least 2 decades of work, there was no way one could succeed. Yet, with just a shake of his hand, the young man before them managed to set up 4 of them in less than a breath. His comprehension of formations could not just be defined with the word formidable anymore. It was already beyond their imagination, reaching the realms of terrifying. Bai Hongyin could not help but ask, Zhongshe, did you really just clear your 8-star formation master examination just a few days ago? I did. I took it together with Brother Luo, and it was really quite troublesome. Recalling the examination he had that day, Zhongxian shook his head. Troublesome. In this instant, Luo Xianqing was seriously contemplating whether he should never speak to the young man ever again. From looking through the formation blueprint to activating the formation, it took you only 5 breaths, and you freaking call that troublesome? If anyone was troubled by that examination, it should be me. Even until now, my 8-star formation master emblem hasn't arrived. The slaughter formation is about to execute. Zhongxian suddenly interjected. While they were chatting, the slaughter formation that he had set up seemed to have absorbed sufficient spiritual energy, and with a brilliant burst of light, it began to whir into action. The next moment, countless bursts of sword chi shot forth. All the others could see was innumerable cold glints flashing before all of the crimson-tail hornets collapsed to the ground, severed into 2. How powerful! Witnessing the might of the slaughter formation, the others felt shivers running down their spine. Even though it was only a grade 8 primary slaughter formation, it was complemented by a beguilement formation and spirit-gathering formation, which raised its prowess to an unbelievable extent. Even for them, they would require a great deal of effort before they could break out of the formation. Something is wrong. Luo Xianqing suddenly noticed something. Considering the powerful might of the slaughter formation, why are the crimson-tail wasps floating stationary in the air, allowing the sword chi to slice right through them? Even if their sense of direction has been confounded by the beguilement formation, their innate sensitivity to danger should still prompt them to dodge the sword chi. You're right. What's going on? Luo Xuanqing's words had jolted everyone into realization as well. As formidable as a grade 8 slaughter formation was, it should not have the power to kill crimson-tail wasps so easily. Yet, the situation before them, the crimson-tail wasps were floating around idly, as if they were completely oblivious to the assault of the slaughter formation. This was a really mystifying situation. Oh. Regarding that, I had set up an illusory formation as well. These crimson-tail wasps aren't too powerful, and their minds aren't too resilient. As such, they are particularly susceptible to illusory formations, Zhongxian replied with a light chuckle. Again, Luo Xuanqing's cheeks twitched intensely, and unable to stand it anymore, he asked, "Just how many formations did you compound in here?" He had only expected Zhongxian to set up a single formation to prevent sound and shockwaves of combat from leaking out. Yet, he actually ended up performing far beyond expectations, setting up 5 formations on top of one another. Just how many more were in there that they did not know of? Well, didn't you all say that the crimson-tail wasps would release poison clouds upon their death? I implemented a gathering formation to channel the poison clouds together. Other than that, I also set up a compression formation. Considering how the poison of the crimson-tail wasps could kill even a Saint 7 Dan expert, if I can just extract some, I should be able to sell it for quite a hefty sum. Zhongxian continued calculating with his fingers. Oh, there's also a formation to search for the Wasp King. Since that fellow is the king, it's bound to have many valuable parts to it. However, I still am not too sure how powerful the Wasp King is, so out of safety considerations, I set up a confinement formation so that I would at least be able to trap it should I fail to kill it. Other than that, there's also a visibility formation for us to look through the mist, a ventilation formation to ensure that we receive fresh air so that it won't feel too suffocating here. Oh, and not to forget, a temperature regulation formation as well so that we can watch the show comfortably. I think that should be all. After saying those words, he turned back to the crowd and saw Luo Xianqing and the others with their mouths wide open. They were all looking at him as if he was a monster. It took a long while before they managed to recover from their shock, but even so, a stifling sensation still continued to suffocate their chests. Talking to that fellow felt almost as if they were stabbing a dagger into their own hearts. Their current feelings could totally be described in 5 words: screw this *T, I'm out. Brother Luo, I heard that the little princess is quite a proficient formation master as well. Bai Hongyan turned to Luo Xianqing and discreetly asked, is she able to set up formations this quickly, too? Is she? She's unable to do it that quickly. Luo Xianqing replied while gulping. But again, my younger sister didn't spend too much time studying each occupation either, she simply masters them too quickly. Well, perhaps except for pill forging I guess. His younger sister was not just a highly talented cultivator, she also grasped each of the occupations extremely quickly. What took others several decades to master, she could become proficient within just several months and reach the peak. The only supporting occupation that she was slightly lacking in was pill forging. This was just like how formations were what he was the worst at. He had to take the 8-star formation master examination 3 times before he managed to barely scrape by. I see. Bai Hongyin nodded. A moment later, she turned to Zhongxian and asked out of curiosity, Zhongshe, are you proficient in pill forging? I'm afraid I can't really forge pills. Zhongxian shook his head dejectedly. He had a tight grasp over the various theories and knowledge concerning pill forging, but he lacked the skills to put this knowledge into practice. Otherwise, he would not have to engage the help of others each time. Upon hearing that, the others heaved a sigh of relief. Considering how monstrous he already was in the field of formations, he would really be inhuman if he was equally formidable in the other supporting occupations. At the very least, the fact that he could not forge pills showed that he was not infallible. Wait a moment, don't you have the 7-star apothecary emblem? Luo Shenqing asked with a doubtful frown. Back then, the fellow had even whipped it out to flaunt to him that he had received the emblem through special application. That was one memory that he would probably never forget. Regarding that, I really am unable to forge pills. I only managed to be promoted through clearing the pill debate examination, Zhongshen explained. Pill debate. Another bout of lightheadedness assaulted Luo Shenqing. At this point, he really wanted to bang his head on the wall. There was no apothecary who did not know that pill debate was many times more difficult than the pill forging examination. The clearance rate for the pill forging examination was at least several dozen in 1,000, but there might not even be a single apothecary out of a group of 100,000 who would be able to clear the pill debate examination. A moment later, after sensing that the formation was not moving anymore, Zhongxian told the other members, "All right, all of the crimson tail wasps are dead." The others did a swift sweep of their surroundings, too, and as expected, all of the crimson tail wasps had collapsed to the ground. With a quick scanning of his formation, Zhongxian's eyes lit up in excitement. I have managed to capture the Wasp King too. Let's head over to take a look. After which, he hurriedly advanced forward. Fearing that they would make a misstep and end up being attacked by the formation, the other members of the group followed tightly behind him. Not long later, they saw a withered crimson tail wasp floating in the air, seemingly on the verge of death. In terms of appearance and size, this wasp was actually not much different from the others, making it nigh impossible to differentiate it from the rest. Zhongxian activated his Eye of Insight to conduct a closer examination of the Wasp King. While the other crimson tail wasps were at Saint 3 Dan to 4 Dan, the Wasp King wielded a cultivation of Saint 6 Dan Grand Dominion Realm Pinnacle. The Wasp King's poison is too strong. I think it would be best to just kill it so that needless trouble doesn't arise from this, Luo Shenqing proposed. Even ordinary crimson tail wasps could kill Saint 7 Dan experts when sufficient poison built up. Given how this one was able to become the Wasp King, its poison was bound to be far more potent. Just to be safe, it would be best to kill it quickly. After all, it would be a disaster if any single one of them was pricked. Yes, its poison is indeed rather potent. Zhongxian nodded as he reached out to grab the crimson tail wasp between his forefinger and middle finger. Be careful. Seeing that Zhongxian actually used his bare hands to grab the Wasp King, cold sweat immediately trickled down everyone's back. Wang. At that moment, an unexpected change occurred. The seemingly debilitated Wasp King dived forward, and the venomous sting on its tail shot straight toward Zhongxian's skin. Puha! A small incision was made on Zhongxian's forefinger, and the venom immediately flowed into his bloodstream. The Wasp King had actually been feigning weakness all along. As soon as it saw that Zhongxian was going to grab it, it immediately leaped up to retaliate. That's the Wasp King's life-bound venomous sting. It's known to be lethal to even Saint 8 Dan cultivators. This is really bad. There's no antidote in the world for it. Seeing how Zhongxian had ended up being stung in his moment of negligence, everyone's face paled in fright. The crimson tail wasp's life-bound venomous sting was a weapon that even 8-star pinnacle physicians were helpless before, and any cultivator of St. 8 Dan and beneath would die within moments after being stung. Without a doubt, the countdown to the death of this genius formation master had already started ticking. Pada. While everyone was panicking, the Wasp King suddenly collapsed to the ground. It convulsed twice before breathing its last breath. Even at its death, its eyes were widened in indignation. The Wasp King has been poisoned to death. Everyone leaped in shock. It was apparent from the situation that not only did the Wasp King fail to poison Zhongxian, it even ended up being poisoned to death instead. This. Zhongxian scratched his head awkwardly, unsure of how he should explain the situation. The Wasp King's assault was so sudden that he did not even have the time to react before the sting was plunged into his finger. At the same time, the Heaven's Path Zhenqi flowing through his body also ended up entering the Wasp King's body, and as a result of that, the Wasp King died. You are a poison master? Everyone turned to Zhongxian with shocked faces. Zhongxian was at a loss as to what to say. The Wasp King attempted to poison him, only to be poisoned to death instead. This situation had unfolded right before their eyes, so there was very little he could say to vindicate himself. If I said that it died on its own, would you believe me? Zhongxian asked hesitantly. The others shook their heads. All right, I'll tell you the truth then. Driving his state of mind, Zhongxian calmly explained, actually, I am a physician. Prior to entering the valley, I swallowed some antidotes. The Wasp King tried to kill me, but it ended up being afflicted by the poison of the antidote I consumed, thus resulting in its death. Poison masters were capable of poisoning others to death, and so could physicians. It was just that the former specialized in the concocting of poison whereas the latter sought to create medicine. Nevertheless, both occupations still intersected at some points. Physician. Antidote. Just what kind of antidote could possibly poison the Wasp King to death? The others frowned in disbelief. It's this one. Zhongxian flicked his wrist and took out a pill. This one. The others took the pill and examined it closely. Before long, deep frowns were etched onto their foreheads. No matter how they looked at it, it was only an ordinary antidote pill. Could such a thing really be able to poison even the Wasp King to death? If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. There are many poisonous substances in the area, so you can just take a few breaths here and there to test the potency of the antidote. Zhongxian shrugged. Forget it. We'll believe that you are a physician. The eyebrows of the others twitched upon hearing Zhongxian's words. Who in the right mind would willingly ingest poison, even to test out the effects of an antidote pill? In any case, every single one of them had their own secrets keep. There was no reason for them to pursue the matter to the very end. All right, let's go then. Seeing that the others had given up on interrogating him, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. With a wave of his hand, he swiftly retracted the formation flags in the surroundings, and after a moment of hesitation, he eventually decided to chuck the carcass of the Wasp King into his storage ring as well. While the carcass of the Wasp King was not of much use to him, he could always use it to deal with others. After retracting the formation flags, their surroundings returned to absolute silence. It seemed like their earlier battle did not draw the attention of other saint beasts. The group heaved a sigh of relief. Holding the antidote that Zhongxian had passed them tightly, Luo Shenqing hesitated for a moment before carefully storing it in a jade bottle. After which, he hurriedly headed to the front of the group once more and began leading the way forward. Chapter 1349 Soul-Binding Golden Bead. These are your formation flags. With a wave of his hand, Zhongxian passed the pile of formation flags back to Bai Hongyan. You can keep them for the time being. They are much better off with you than with me, Bai Hongyan replied. After witnessing the other party's proficiency in formations, she knew that the formation flags would be put to much better use in the other party's hands. Zhongxian's eyes lit up. Thank you. These formation flags were indeed of much use to him. If he could only kill a half-phantasmal space expert with his current strength, with these formation flags in hand, as long as he could catch the enemy off guard, even a phantasmal space realm intermediate stage expert could be cornered by him. After their previous encounter with the Crimson Tail Wasps, the group was far more careful than before. They continued advancing deeper into the valley for 4 hours straight. Within those 4 hours, they got into several small skirmishes with Saint Beasts, but thanks to Zhongxian's formations and the superior fighting prowess of the group, it did not take them too much effort to resolve those situations. At some point in time, Luo Xianqing suddenly stopped behind a massive boulder and gestured to the area ahead of him. The Dongshu Gourd is located in the cavern just ahead. Tracing the trajectory of the valley, the others soon saw an average-sized cavern appearing before their eyes. Due to the lush vines that grew along the cliff, the entrance was concealed to the point that only small slits could be seen. If one did not pay close attention, one would have overlooked the presence of the cavern easily. This place doesn't seem to be any different from the other areas though, Bai Hongyan said with a confused frown. In her view, there was nothing unique about the cavern. There was no astoundingly powerful aura or concentration of spiritual energy. It felt no different from the other parts of the mountain range. Would something as valuable as the Dongshu Gourd really be inside? That's because there's an aura isolation formation around his cavern. Otherwise, someone else would have long harvested the Dongshu Gourd, Luo Xianqing said. The others also nodded in agreement after hearing these words. Indeed. If the cavern emanated a powerful aura or had a high concentration of spiritual energy, even the Saint Beasts would have charged in upon noticing it to dig out the treasure within. Let's head in then. Why are we waiting out here? Yun Lianhai urged excitedly. As a qualified treasure hunter, his blood raced in exhilaration upon hearing that the treasure was right before them. We can't head in right now. We have to wait till nighttime, Luo Xianqing informed the group through Zhenqi telepathy. Nighttime? Why? Yun Lianhai was baffled by Luo Xuanqing's words. The others also could not understand why Luo Xianqing wanted to wait till nighttime before making a move. One must know that they were currently in the midst of a valley where Saint 8 Dan beasts lurked. Every additional second there put them in greater danger. A netherworld azure dragon beast lives in the cavern, Luo Xianqing explained. Netherworld azure dragon beast? Bai Hongyan and the others narrowed their eyes in astonishment. Noting the changes in the expressions of those around him, Zhongxian could not help but ask, is it a really formidable saint beast? So far, his knowledge of beast taming had only reached 6 star. While he had read quite a variety of books and come to learn of some of the more formidable saint beasts, he still was not too well versed with the rarer and more elusive saint beasts. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast is a saint beast that possesses the bloodline of the dragon tribe. Just by reaching maturity, they would already achieve a strength on par with Saint 8 Dan experts, Yuan Xiao explained grimly. Saint 8 Dan? Zhongxian's expression turned grave. To be honest, he had never seen a saint beast of that tier before. If he could just tame one of those, he would stand a much better chance in the struggle against the Zhong clan for Luo Ruoxin. Indeed. Even with all of our strengths combined, we won't be a match for that fellow, so it would be best for us to wait till nighttime so as to not draw its attention, Luo Xianqing said grimly. Due to their innate talents and superior physical prowess, Saint 8 Dan beasts tended to wield fighting prowess far stronger than Saint 8 Dan cultivators. Even though they were offspring of powerful clans and organizations, possessing multiple means up their sleeves, they were still insufficient to deal with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Saint beasts of that tier should possess a keen awareness of their surroundings and be able to perceive even the slightest disturbance in their surroundings. Is there any difference between entering now and at night time? Zhongxian asked. Saint beasts would also unlock their spiritual perception at Saint 2 Dan, allowing them to be impervious to the reduced visibility of nighttime. At Saint 8 Dan, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast could be considered one of the strongest saint beasts in the world, so what difference would day and night make to it? It's because I have this artifact. Luo Xianqing flicked his wrist, and a jade container appeared in his palm. He pried it open lightly, and a ray of brilliant light flickered out. Sitting at the center of the jade container was a golden bead. It was made of a material that Zhongxian could not recognize, but its radiance was amazing. What is it? Bai Hongyan asked. It seemed like Zhongxian was not the only one who did not recognize what the golden bead was. This is a soul-binding golden bead that I had someone specially craft for me, Luo Xianqing replied. Soul-binding golden bead? The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast possesses the dragon bloodline, and due to that, it's particularly sensitive to golden, shiny objects. So, I specially had this artifact forged so as to capture its attention. Look at the formation marks inscribed on top of it. It's carved in a way to induce drowsiness if one stares at it for an extended period of time, Luo Shenqing explained. However, in the day, sunlight would compromise the effectiveness of the soul-binding golden bead, making it harder to draw the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's attention. So, it would be best to wait till nighttime. The crowd nodded in realization. It was no secret that those of the dragon bloodline possessed a crazed fancy for objects that were particularly shiny or dazzling. As long as they used the soul-binding golden bead well, it could indeed lead to exceptional results. Once they lulled the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to sleep, they would be able to bypass it safely as long as they proceeded carefully. Brother Luo, can I allow me to examine your soul-binding golden bead? Zhong Xian asked. Here you go, Luo Shenqing said as he tossed the golden bead over. Catching it, Zhong Xian began examining it closely. He had to admit that it was an exquisite work. The person who had forged the bead must have been an 8-star celestial designer at the very minimum. Flaws. A book materialized in the library of Heaven's Path. Soul-binding golden bead, forged by 8-star celestial designer Jiang Feifei. The book detailed the origin of the soul-binding golden bead, its effects, and its flaws. Seeing that Zhong Xian was studying the soul-binding golden bead closely, Luo Shenqing asked in curiosity, Zhongshe, are you well versed in the artifacts of celestial designers too? I have read quite a few books regarding that, so I do know a thing or two about that field. Zhong Xian nodded. He was still a 6-star celestial designer at the moment, not having taken the examination ever since leaving the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. 6-star celestial designers could already be considered professionals in the field, but in comparison with the true experts in the Sanctum of Sages, his mastery and knowledge could only be considered minor at the very most. Oh! Since you are well versed in celestial designer artifacts too, what do you think about my soul-binding golden bead? Luo Shenqing asked in interest. Since there was some time to waste before nighttime, he was curious to see how much this genius formation master knew about celestial designing. Zhong Xian hesitated for a moment before speaking up. Judging from the exquisiteness of the work, I deduce that this artifact was forged by an 8-star celestial designer. However, as exquisite as the work is, there are still quite a number of flaws in it, so I am a little apprehensive as to whether it will be sufficient to deal with a Saint 8 Dan beast or not. He had to admit that the soul-binding golden bead was well designed, such that it could easily lull any Saint 7 Dan beasts to sleep. However, if it was used against a Saint 8 Dan beast, it probably would not be that simple. I spent a heavy price to get the genius celestial designer of the inner sanctum to forge it for me. There are no saint beasts possessing the dragon bloodline that could resist its allure and remain unfazed by the effects of the formation marks on it, Luo Shenqing declared confidently. Out of safety consideration, he had even had the elders in his clan appraise the soul-binding golden bead after it was forged, and the response he had received was that it was highly effective against Saint 8 Dan beasts. The formation marks do harness the secrets of the soul, which makes it highly hypnotizing to humans. However, I can't say for sure whether it'll have the same effectiveness when used on a saint beast. After all, the soul of a beast is vastly different to the soul of a human. When you engaged the help of the genius celestial designer, did you tell the person that you were intending to use the artifact to deal with a Netherworld Azure Dragon beast? Zhong Xian asked. This. Luo Shenqing was taken aback by Zhong Xian's questioning. As this involved the confidentiality of his mission to acquire the Dongshu gourd, he had only told Jiang Feifei that he was intending to use the soul-binding golden bead to deal with a Saint 8 Dan expert, not specifying the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast in his request. He had thought that as long as it could work on Saint 8 Dan experts, it should not have any trouble with saint beasts too. In proportion to their physical mass, saint beasts tend to possess larger and stronger souls than humans. Nevertheless, as long as the soul-binding golden bead is well used, it's not entirely impossible for it to lull the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast to sleep. However, it would probably require quite some time, so it might not be as convenient as you thought it to be, Zhong Xian said. As long as it succeeds in lulling the netherworld azure dragon beast to sleep, the duration doesn't matter. Luo Shenqing shook his head. As long as he could knock out that massive fellow, what would an additional hour or two matter? He had already made half a year of preparations for the Dongshu Gourd. Another day or two would not make a difference to him. Zhongxian was silent for a moment before replying. Considering that it's a Saint 8 Dan beast we are dealing with, every second will spell a greater degree of danger. What I'm trying to say here is that if you have any other alternative means, it would be best to use it instead. Counting solely on the soul-binding golden bead won't be a safe option. Standing before a Saint 8 Dan beast was almost equivalent to being in the same room as a ticking time bomb. It would be one thing if they succeeded in lulling the netherworld azure dragon beast to sleep, but what if they were to fail? Alternative means. Can you forge an even better soul-binding golden bead? Luo Shenqing asked impatiently. Zhongxian shook his head in response. Due to the limited number of celestial designer books he had read, he was not too sure what he could do to resolve the flaws in the soul-binding golden bead. Then, what's the point of saying so much? I had to look through many books before I was able to discover this method to deal with saint beasts possessing the dragon bloodline. Alright, there's no need to say anything more. Let's just give it a try first. If it doesn't work out, we'll just have to resort to forceful measures. Even if we are unable to kill the netherworld azure dragon beast, as long as we can stall it for a few hours, we should still be able to harvest the Dongshu Gourd, Luo Shenqing said. In any case, his goal was to obtain the Dongshu Gourd, not to kill the netherworld azure dragon beast. Even if they could not knock out the latter, as long they could find a way to stall it for some time, it was still possible for them to succeed in their mission. Alright then. Having no better solution in mind either, Zhongxian could only go along with the current plan. The group continued discussing for some time to sort out their plan to deal with the netherworld azure dragon beast. Just as they were about to rest up to prepare themselves for the battle later in the night, Zhongxian's eyebrows suddenly shot up. Someone is here. Someone is here. The crowd frowned. They were all Saint 7 Dan experts, but even they did not perceive anyone's presence. How would the young man know? I left some small formations while making my way here. As long as someone comes into their vicinity, they will activate and alert me, Zhongxian explained. His spiritual perception was far larger than that of ordinary cultivators, but of course, he could not possibly tell them that. So, he could only find another excuse. Who is it? Luo Shenqing asked. I don't know either. They are currently making their way over here. They should be emerging from behind that boulder over there soon, Zhongxian said as he pointed behind him. Luo Shenqing immediately turned around to stare at the boulder behind him, and right after, a couple of figures emerged from behind the boulder. It's him. Luo Shenqing's face immediately turned livid. Who are they? Zhongxian asked. Luo Shenqing clenched his fists tightly and narrowed his eyes. They are from the Zhong clan. Zhongheng. Chapter 1350. I'll poison him to death. Zhongheng? Why is he here? Yuan Xiao's face immediately darkened. Bai Hongyan and the others also frowned upon hearing that name. He is. Zhongxian asked in confusion. Of the Zhong clan members, he had only heard of Zhong Yu and the young prodigy. He had never heard of Zhongheng before. Brother Luo and Zhongheng are geniuses who entered the Sanctum of Sages in the same cohort. They have always competed with one another, and their relationship. Yuan Xiao took a glance at Luo Shenqing before whispering with a suppressed voice, they are not too amiable. Not too amiable? Hearing those words, Bai Hongyan burst out laughing. More like mortal enemies. No matter what they do, they just have to compare with and outdo the other. If Luo Shenqing destroys a hall, that fellow would run off to destroy too. Just think of all the trouble they have caused throughout the years. This. She did not bother lowering her voice, so Luo Shenqing heard her words loud and clear. His face immediately reddened in embarrassment. He wanted to retort, but he found that there was nothing he could say. Destroys a hall? You are saying that Brother Luo's reputation of being a king of destruction is intentional? Zhongxian was shocked. Of course not. Luo Shenqing harumphed in displeasure. It's just that. I was too focused on winning and forgot to hold back a little. Too focused on winning? If Zhongheng clears a trial in 10 minutes, Luo Shenqing would desperately do everything he could to clear the trial in 9 minutes. Of course, there's no way he would be able to control himself when he's going all out. Bai Hongyin uttered leisurely. It was indeed hard to control one's strength when one was attempting to break a record, so it was inevitable that mishaps would occur. Looking back, Zhongxian found that even though he had caused a fair bit of destruction as well, he was at least in control of himself. He never caused trouble for the sake of it, and more often than not, they were all freak accidents resulting from unfortunate coincidences or misunderstandings. In comparison to Luo Shenqing, he felt like he was just a gentle lamb. If that's the case, does this mean that Zhongheng heard news about the Dongshu Gourd and came here to stick his nose into the matter as well? Zhongxian asked with a frown. Given that Zhongheng and Luo Shenqing were rivals of one another, their cultivation was likely around the same level as one another. If Zhongheng was really there to meddle in the matter, things could get really troublesome for them. Don't worry, I have only told you about the matter concerning the Dongshu Gourd. There's no way he could know about that. He's here for something completely different, Luo Shenqing replied confidently. Oh. The others were slightly surprised by Luo Xuanqing's words. What other business would Zhongheng have there other than the Dongshu Gourd? The Sanctum of Sages was at least several million li away, so he could not possibly have been there to sightsee, could he? Look at the group with him. Zhao Zun and Zhao Yi from the Beast Tamer Hall, Li Heng from the Celestial Designer Guild, and Yu Wen from the Physician Guild here, if I'm not mistaken. He's here to tame a saint beast, Luo Shenqing replied. Tame a saint beast? Yun Lianhai pondered for a moment before widening his eyes in realization. Now that you mention it, I do remember hearing something related to that. Not too long ago, Zhongheng posted a beast-taming mission, offering 3 jade spirit essence for helpers to aid him in the taming of a saint beast that possesses the dragon bloodline. Could it be that the saint beast he is hoping to tame is the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast? I also recall something like that. Everyone was taken aback by those words. Even Zhongxian was slightly surprised. A few days ago, Sun Qiong had told him that there was a beast tamer mission that offered generous rewards. He had intended to take it up, but he had eventually forgotten about the matter because he was in a rush to report for the elite division. Who would have thought that the mission was actually posted by Zhongheng? More importantly, to think that they would meet one another here. That seems to be the case, Luo Shenqing said as a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. That's way too much of a coincidence. Indeed. Just as we were planning to deal with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, they suddenly arrived here to tame it. Brother Luo, could this actually be your doing? Everyone quickly turned their gazes toward Luo Shenqing. Considering how many saint beasts there were in the world, it was far too much of a coincidence for them to meet one another in somewhere as remote as this. It was hard to believe that Luo Shenqing did not play a part in orchestrating this matter. Who else could it be? Luo Xuanqing's lips crept up gleefully. That fellow constantly keeps a tab on my whereabouts. So, I knew that it was only a matter of time before he found out what I'm up to no matter how discreet I am. In order to prevent the secret of the Dongshu Gourd from getting out, I went around buying beast taming tools and had the soul-binding golden bead forged so as to create an image that my goal is to tame the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Who could have known that fool would really fall for my ploy? The crowd glanced at one another. Such a thing was possible. But thinking again, everything made sense. There had always been bad blood between the both of them, so it was only natural that Zhongheng would attempt to sabotage Luo Xuanqing's efforts after learning that the latter was intending to tame a Saint 8 Dan beast. Smart. Zhongxian remarked. This was truly 2 birds in a stone. Not only did he manage to turn Zhongheng's attention away from his real goal, he even managed to get the latter to clear away the danger for him. Regardless of whether Zhongheng would successfully tame the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast in the end or not, he would surely be a great aid to them by helping them distract the latter's attention, thus opening a gap for them to sneak past the latter. As expected of an offspring of the Luo clan, his future brother-in-law Shaw was skilled in scheming against others. Hidden beneath his reckless, brash exterior was a calculative, black-hearted soul. After coming to realize what was happening, Yun Lianhai's eyes glowed in respect as he asked, since his intending to tame the netherworld azure dragon beast, should we hide ourselves and wait for the two to engage one another first before heading in? He had been feeling a little apprehensive about how they would deal with the netherworld azure dragon beast should the soul-binding golden bead fail to work its wonders. Since Zhongheng was willing to confront that beast in their place, they were more than willing to sit back and enjoy the show. That won't do either. Luo Shenqing shook his head. I have competed with Zhongheng for many years, and as much as I hate to admit it, I can roughly fathom his train of thoughts. Most likely, he realized that I was on my way here, so he quickly chased over here as well. He will become suspicious if I am nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, if he chooses to explore the cavern further, there's a good chance that he will notice the existence of the Dongshu gourd as well. What should we do then? Yun Lianhai asked. Simple, Luo Shenqing said with a sharp glint in his eyes. Aren't they intending to tame the netherworld azure dragon beast? We'll act as if we are hindering them while luring the saint beast over to them. Once they have their hands preoccupied with it, we will be able to do whatever we want. Good idea. The others quickly gave their approval to that course of action. Since they were putting on a show, they should go all the way. Since you are here, don't you think that you will be letting down the audience if you don't make a move? So, why don't I set the stage for you? It will be two birds with one stone like that. Not only will your vanity and pride be satisfied, I can also reap the fruits of victory at the same time. It was apparent that Luo Shenqing had an idea in mind from how confident he was, so Zhongxian asked, Brother Luo, do you have a plan in mind? Of course. Luo Shenqing nodded. My plan is for us to split into two teams. One team will aim to hinder their advancement, whereas the other will engage the netherworld azure dragon beast and act as if they are trying to tame it. Once Zhongheng realizes that I am a step ahead of him, he will surely panic and hurriedly make a move, and the rest will be simple. The others nodded upon hearing his plan. Considering that Zhongheng knew that Luo Shenqing was there to tame the netherworld azure dragon beast, he would surely realize that something was off if Luo Shenqing allowed him to engage it without hindering him. Since that was the case, it would be best for them to struggle a bit and enrage the netherworld azure dragon beast while they were at it before passing the mess over to Zhongheng. With Zhongheng's strength and means, the netherworld azure dragon beast would not be able to kill him. However, it would be able to give him a hell of a time and stall him, thus preventing him from stopping them from obtaining the Dongshu gourd. Since everyone agrees that there's no problem with this, I'll start making arrangements. Seeing that the crowd approved of his idea, Luo Shenqing first turned to Zhongxian and Yuan Xiao and said, the two of you will proceed ahead to engage the netherworld azure dragon beast. Yuan Xiao, you possess stronger defense, so you should take the front line, whereas Zhongshe will support you from the back with his formations. If that bastard Zhongheng hasn't appeared, we still might have some trouble dealing with the netherworld azure dragon beast, but since he just has to stick a leg into my business, there's no need for us to hold back against him anymore. Try to make the netherworld azure dragon beast as angry as you can later on. We'll find a way to make Zhongheng take over. Got it. Yuan Zhongxian and Yuan Xiao nodded. The instruction was actually rather simple. He and Yuan Xiao were in charge of pulling the aggro of the netherworld azure dragon beast until Zhongheng's group appeared. As for Hongyin and Lianhai, follow me. We'll be engaging Zhongheng and his group. Remember, we must try our best to stop them from advancing, Luo Shenqing said. After saying those words, he began making his way over Zhongheng's group, and Bai Hongyan and Yun Lianhai followed behind. We should make a move, too. Seeing that the others had left, Yuan Xiao walked past the boulder and carefully entered the cavern. Zhongshe, you should set up your formation over here first. It doesn't have to be too strong, just sufficient to trap the netherworld azure dragon beast for a short while. Meanwhile, I'll try to draw it out of the cavern and into your formation. That should suffice for our part, Yuan Xiao told Zhongxian telepathically as he proceeded ahead. Zhongxian nodded in response. That was indeed the simplest way to go around doing that. Their goal was not to tame or kill but to anger that huge fellow. After trapping the netherworld azure dragon beast, we'll have to rush over to assist Luo Shenqing and the others. Zhongheng isn't a weak opponent, even in the inner sanctum, he is considered one of the strongest expert. The battle between the both of them is spectacular even by the standards of the inner sanctum. I'm sure you'll be able to learn a lot from spectating their battle, Yuan Xiao said with a hint of excitement in his voice. Cultivators loved to watch duels between true experts as they were a good opportunity for them to reflect on themselves and learn new things. Luo Shenqing and Zhong Heng were figures who stood at the very top of the inner sanctum, so naturally, a fight between them was worth watching. All right. Zhong Xian nodded indifferently. To be honest, he was not too interested in the fight between the two of them. As his cultivation had not reached Saint Seven Dan yet, there were bound to be many details that he would not really be able to make sense of. Besides, he would definitely have to invoke the Library of Heaven's Path in the midst of watching the battle, and he was certain that he would feel so disgusted that he might even puke once he saw all of those ridiculous flaws in their techniques. What? You aren't interested? Seeing through Zhong Xian's thoughts, Yuan Xiao chuckled. Are you thinking that a fight between the both of them will just be another ordinary spar? You are greatly mistaken then. Whenever the two of them cross blows, each and every single move they make is sharp and deadly. Sharp and deadly? Zhong Xian was astounded. Just what kind of grudge do they have to go that far? As fellow students, surely there could not be a reason for such animosity. You are really unaware of the matter. Well, I guess that's to be expected, considering how you have only arrived at the Sanctum of Sages a couple of days ago, Yuan Xiao said with a nod. He swiftly scanned his surroundings, and after confirming that there was no one around, he said with a hushed voice, according to rumors within the Sanctum of Sages, it said that Zhong Heng intends to court the little princess of the Luo clan. Wait, where are you going? Before Yuan Xiao could finish his story, the young man behind him suddenly turned around and left. I'm going to poison that Zhong Heng to death. Zhong Xian uttered coldly. Yuan Xiao. Chapter 1351. The shameless Zhong clan. Despite being filled with indignation, Zhong Xian eventually decided against going. With a deep frown, he asked in a doubtful voice, isn't the little princes of the Luo clan already engaged to the young prodigy of the Zhong clan? As an offspring of the Zhong clan, does that Zhong Chun really intend to vie for his clan head's bride? He definitely wouldn't dare do something as brazen as vying for his clan head's bride, just that, the young prodigy has been missing for a very long time, and there are some rumors going around. Yuan Xiao warily scanned his surroundings once more, and after confirming again and again that there was no one eavesdropping on their conversation, he secretly sent a telepathic message to Zhong Xian. It said that even if the young prodigy doesn't appear by the 3rd month of the next year, the Zhong clan will still send an outstanding offspring with pure bloodline of around the same age to complete the marriage ceremony, and Zhong Chun happens to be in the list of candidate. In the end, what's important is for the marriage to go through, by hook or by crook. There's actually such a matter. Zhong Xian's face reddened in fury, and he nearly exploded on the spot. Even though he had been displeased about Luo Ruoxin's engagement with the young prodigy in the past, he had still been able to reluctantly tolerate it given that both parties were top-notch geniuses from their respective clans. But the young prodigy was simply showing blatant disrespect for Luo Ruoxin over here. Not only did he disappear irresponsibly into thin air, he even wanted to find others to replace him in the engagement. That was far too much. It was not like Luo Ruoxin was a commodity for sale. Did the Zhong clan think that just anyone would be worthy of her? How could the #1 sage clan of the master-teacher continent be so shameless? If I have a chance to visit the Zhong clan, I swear that I'll raise up a storm there or else my surname isn't Zhong. Zhong Xian vowed in his heart with gritted teeth. But again, that is only hearsay. I can't guarantee its authenticity, so do take it with a pinch of salt, Yuan Xiao explained with a frown upon noticing that something was wrong with Zhong Xian's complexion. The little princess of the Luo clan isn't just supremely talented, she's also renowned for her unparalleled beauty as well. There's no one who wouldn't be charmed by her after catching a glimpse of her allure. Zhong Chun had the honor of meeting her once, so I guess it wouldn't be too surprising for him to be infatuated with her. And as you know, Luo Shenqing is an overly affectionate brother. How could he remain calm upon seeing that Zhong Chun is lusting over his younger sister? Due to that, whenever they start fighting, there's no one who can pull them apart. Recalling the previous few times that the two of them battled with one another, Yuan Xiao could not help but cower a little. Even though he boasted nigh invincible defense, he knew that he would be no match for Luo Shenqing once the latter activated his bloodline ability. The reason that human-shaped tornado had left so many managerial elders with a splitting headache was not just due to his aptitude in causing destruction. More importantly, it was due to the overwhelming fighting prowess he commanded. Suppressing the fury in his heart, Zhongxian waved his hand. Got it. I'll set up a formation here, so you just have to lure the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast over, and I'll immediately activate the formation to have it trapped temporarily. That fellow dared lust over his girlfriend. He would have to see just how formidable that fellow was. If that fellow was not up to standards, he would have him poisoned to death. It happened that he had just acquired the poison essence of the Crimson-Tail Wasp King, so he could poison even a Saint 8 Dan expert to death. Considering how Zhong Chun was roughly around the same cultivation realm as Luo Shenqing, he should not be able to withstand the effects of the poison either. All right. Yuan Xiao nodded. With a grim look, he lowered his body and began rolling toward the cavern as a round ball. Upon reaching the entrance of the cavern, he had to struggle a bit before he could squeeze his way in. After seeing that Yuan Xiao had entered the cavern, Zhongxian took a deep breath before waving his hand, and several hundred formation flags immediately floated into the air. Due to the limitations of his cultivation, he was only able to set up grade 8 primary formations. Anything beyond that would be putting far too great a strain on his strength. But the problem was that it was impossible to trap a Saint 8 Dan beast without a grade 8 intermediate or even advanced formation. My cultivation is still far too lacking. If one were to just look at Zhongxian's current understanding of formations, setting up a grade 8 pinnacle would not pose a problem to him. In fact, even grade 9 primary formations would not be too much trouble. However, his lacking cultivation was a problem that no amount of understanding of formations could resolve. In order to set up a grade 8 intermediate formation, he would require the ability to construct phantasm space. No amount of zhenqi could substitute that. Zhongxian's mind quickly spun into action, and in just the blink of an eye, a formation surfaced in his thoughts. It's not viable for me to set up a formation to confine the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast in for long, but if it's just trapping it for an hour or so, I should be able to do it with the Telopsis confinement formation. Even though the Telopsis confinement formation was just a grade 8 primary formation, it had the remarkable ability to seal all of one's senses, and this included spiritual perception. Those who stepped into its area of effect would find themselves plunged into complete darkness, leaving a feeling of helplessness and despair arising from the bottom of their hearts. It was said that the elder who designed the formation had once captured 108 owl-type saint beasts that were adept in navigating through the darkness. By the time his formation was constructed, every single one of them was trapped within it, unable to escape. It was not particularly effective against human cultivators, who could navigate their way through using a compass or the sort, but it was definitely a powerful weapon to deal with saint beasts. Of course, he would be being too optimistic to think that it could trap a Saint 8 Dan beast for too long, but an hour should not be too difficult. I'll choose this one then. Zhongxian swiftly imagined a few scenarios to gauge the viability of this course of action, and he eventually came to the conclusion that the Telopsis confinement formation was the most suitable one of the formations that he could construct. Thus, he flicked his fingers. Su 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 su. Formation flags darted across the air, falling into place in the surroundings. They dived forcefully into the various gaps in the nearby boulders or soil, disappearing from sight. It did not matter whether formation flags were located above ground or underground. As long as they accurately harnessed the flow of spiritual energy from the surroundings, there would not be too much difference in the prowess of the formation. After this was done, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief and began waiting patiently for Yuan Xiao to return with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. But after waiting for roughly 10 minutes or so, Yuan Xiao still did not appear. A frown emerged on Zhongxian's forehead. All Yuan Xiao has to do is pull the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast over. Should it really take such a long time? I should head over to take a look. Deciding to check out the situation, Zhongxian began making his way over to the cavern. However, before he could even walk through the entrance, An overpowering shockwave suddenly burst forth from within. His eyes narrowed in alarm, and he hurriedly executed the unbounded Voyager and retreated from the scene. Peng! However, Zhongxian's reaction was still a little too slow. The powerful shockwave struck him forcefully from the back. Pu! A sweet sensation gripped his throat, and he was sent flying into the nearby cliff, smashing out a huge hole in it. From the impact of the collision, Zhongxian felt his entire body being strained to its limits. The muscles throughout his body were mostly torn, and it felt as if his bones were on the verge of being shattered into innumerable pieces. A pain that was so excruciating that it seemed to stab right into his soul assaulted him. It was just a brief instant, but Zhongxian had already sustained severe injuries. If not for his recent breakthroughs, especially the enhancement of his physical resilience through the cultivation of the Heaven's Path Golden Body, which made his body as strong as a half-saint high-tier artifact, there was a good chance that he might have died on the spot. Who is it? Zhongxian roared as he swiftly drove his Heaven's Path Shenqi to heal his injuries. At the same time, he pushed his palm against the wall to turn himself around, wanting to see who the culprit was. However, before he managed to do so, he suddenly felt goosebumps rising all over his body once more. Another shockwave wielding crushing might was pressing down on him. It seemed like the other party was intent on forcing him into a corner. Damn it! Knowing that he could very well lose his life if this shockwave were to strike him, Zhongxian hurriedly activated his dominion. With his cultivation reaching leaving aperture pinnacle, his dominion no longer spanned over a radius of 1 meter. Instead, just like a normal Grand Dominion Realm primary stage cultivator, it covered a radius of 5 meters around him. On top of that, the power of his dominion was extremely compact, making it far stronger than a Grand Dominion Realm primary stage cultivator's. The emergence of his dominion managed the incoming attack significantly, but before Zhongxian could heave a sigh of relief, cracks suddenly began creeping across his dominion. Catcher! Catcher! They swiftly consumed his entire dominion before eventually shattering it with a resounding explosion. Pu! Another spurt of fresh blood spilled forth from Zhongxian's mouth as the incoming shockwave pushed him further into the cliff, threatening to reduce him into a lump of meat paste. The other party is simply too strong. At the very least, they must be a Saint 7 Dan pinnacle expert. Zhongxian thought as a chilling sensation arose in his heart. After the 2 consecutive blows they had traded, it was apparent that Zhongxian was in an absolutely disadvantageous position. In fact, he did not even manage to catch who his opponent was throughout the entire encounter. This deeply reminded him of the plight that he had been in when he first met Luo Chengxin. In face of the devastating strength that the other party wielded, Zhongxian found a hint of helplessness arising in his heart. Just who in the world are you? Knowing that there was no time to be wasted, Zhongxian flicked his hand as he roared, "Puppets, block him, hula!" The 100 or so puppets he had in his storage ring immediately emerged in the area. These were the puppets that he had managed to tame from the vicious of the northern marshlands. While most of them were only at the leaving aperture realm, their combined strength was still a sight to behold. Boom! As soon as the puppets appeared, they immediately positioned themselves in a formation before launching an assault on the fellow who had attacked him from behind. After becoming an 8-star formation master, Zhongxian had made some rearrangements to the collaborative formation of the puppets, thus bringing their prowess to a whole new level. Sonic booms erupted here and there under their powerful might. Back then, while the puppets were using the offensive formations of the Combat Master Hall, they had been able to defeat the Saint 6 Dan primary stage Pavilion Master Yu with ease. With their current enhanced ability, even dealing with Saint 7 Dan opponents was within their means. Su. What was frightening about them was how relentlessly their attacks fell, reminiscent of the endless waves of an ocean. However, before they could reach their full strength, another powerful force burst forth once more. It was a strength that carried the imposing air reminiscent of an avalanche. It felt as if, no matter how one struggled, there was just no way to escape from it. Peng 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 peng. Amid a series of sonic booms, the collaborative formation of the puppet was forcefully torn apart. Following which, the puppets were sent flying one after another. With astounding force, they were slammed into the cliff face around the area, incapacitating them for good. Su. While the puppets were sent flying one after another, a slight buzz suddenly sounded in the air. At some point in time, a sword had appeared right above them. It warped into a streak of light blue as it charged forth with incredible prowess. It was apparent that this sword had been charging up for a very long time. Its emergence swiftly caused a massive vortex to gather in the area, and it took just an instant for it to appear behind the assailant. Lingshu sword. Zhong Xian knew from the start that the puppets would be no match for the assailant, so he had hidden the Lingshu sword among them to ready the true killing strike. Even though he had no time to execute the sea-severing sword, the Lingshu sword was still a blade that was no weaker than Saint Seven Dan experts. Its assault clearly displayed its superior might, and it charged forth with strength that threatened to slice even the world apart. Wang. Zhong Xian thought that this assault would send the assailant into a panic, but then he suddenly heard a slight buzz. Following which, the structure of the surrounding space warped, and it felt as if the Lingshu sword had fallen into a folded space, resulting in a complete termination in their telepathic link. Saint 8 Dan. Zhong Xian thought as his body stiffened in horror. Chapter 1352 I'll accept your challenge. At Saint 8 Dan Dimension Sundering Realm, cultivators would gain the ability of dimension sundering, allowing them to temporarily isolate spaces from the world and establish dominance over it. This ability would usually be manifested in their dominion, and it would completely sever any telepathy links, making it impossible for other cultivators to even communicate remotely with their weapons within their sphere of control. At the same time, any attacks that were launched into the Dominion would simply run out of control, like a boulder being thrown into the sea. To draw a comparison, if one could be said to have gained a primary control over the space around them at Grand Dominion Realm and Phantasm Space Realm, at Dimension Sundering Realm, their strength would have already fully matured, granting them the strength to create their own personal space. As long as they willed it, they could steal a space from the world and establish their dominance over it. The strike launched by the Lingshu sword was indeed powerful, such that even Phantasm Space Realm experts would falter before its might. However, against Dimension Sundering Realm experts, its strength was truly lacking. Wong 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 wong. The Lingshu sword trembled non-stop in horror, but no matter how it struggled, it was unable to advance or retreat in the slightest. It was as if it was a nail hammered into a wall. Vicious, prepare to make a move too. Zhong Xian was astonished by the situation as well, but he knew that panic would be of no use to him. He immediately entered the heart of Tranquil Water State and established communication with Vicious within the Book of Heaven's Path. Unless pushed to it, he would never tap into the power of Vicious, his clone, and his Poison Master abilities. Once those means were used, he would have no choice but to kill his opponent. There was no second alternative to that. He had thought that he could cope with just his puppet and the Lingshu sword, but clearly, the assailant who had attacked him far exceeded what he could cope with those means. Thus, he could only resort to his trump card. Knowing the perilous situation Zhong Xian was in, Vicious swiftly replied, "Yes, master." At Zhong Xian's will, a finger suddenly materialized behind the assailant. Hula! With a seemingly light tap, a mysterious power shot forth from the finger, and the Dominion began shattering as if a mirror. Even though Vicious cultivation was only at Saint Seven Dan pinnacle, and even subduing Luo Shenqing would pose some difficulty to him, he was still a figure who had once stood at the very top of the master-teacher continent, so his eye of discernment and experience were still spectacular. On top of that, the assailant had his hands full dealing with Zhong Xian's puppets and suppressing the rampaging Lingshu sword. As a result, the assailant actually ended up being caught off guard by Vicious attack. Catcher! Catcher! As the Dominion swiftly approached its limits, Zhong Xian also felt the overwhelming force that was pressing down on him abruptly releasing, so he quickly pushed himself out of the cliff and turned around to face the assailant. What he was met with a 30-meter-long dragon-shaped beast floating nearby. Its body was grayish in color, and its eyes were dyed crimson. It emanated an aura of imposing authority. Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Gudung. Zhong Xian's heart skipped a beat. He had thought that Luo Shenqing and the others might have lost, and Zhong Chun and the others had proceeded over to make a move against them. However, who would have thought that the person who was making a move on him was actually the saint beast they were supposed to be dealing with? If it was standing here, didn't that mean that there was nothing in the cavern at all? It was no wonder Yuan Xiao still was not out yet. Most likely, he was still busy looking through the empty cavern, unaware of the fact that the massive beast that he was looking for was not inside at all. A Saint 8 Dan beast. It was only natural that his means did not work on the other party. Against an expert of such a caliber, there was indeed very little that he could do. The Netherworld Azure Dragon beast harumphed coldly. Brazen fools, do you really think that you are able to tame me? Its voice was not too loud, but it seemed to echo endlessly within one's mind, reminiscent of the reverberations of a bell. Zhong Xian's heart shuddered upon hearing those words, and he quickly spoke up to refute that claim. How could someone of my strength possibly dream of taming you? I think there must be a misunderstanding somewhere. Why would that huge fellow suddenly speak such words? Saint beasts were proud, lofty individuals, which made taming them an incredibly difficult act. This was also the reason 8-star beast tamers were particularly respected in the master-teacher continent. Under normal circumstances, in order to tame a saint beast, one would need to prepare all kinds of gifts and find a way to befriend it. Only after one had reached a certain level of intimacy with the saint beast would they extend an invitation to it. As such, even for 8-star pinnacle beast tamers, it would take several years before they were able to tame a Saint 8 Dan beast. And yet, to be told such words when they had not even done anything yet. Just how did the situation come this? Saint beasts hated the notion of submitting to others. It was one thing if the other party was stronger than them and helpless to retaliate, but for a leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle cultivator to even dream of taming it, it was no wonder the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast was enraged. What other business can you possibly have here if that's not the case? Someone has already told me that your group plans on enslaving me to make me a tool to further your ambitions. The Netherworld Azure Dragon beast roared furiously, and its voice caused the entire ground to tremble. Someone has told you that? Zhong Xian was taken aback for a moment before his eyes widened in realization. It must be that Zhong Chun. It was just a moment ago that he had thought that Zhong Chun was foolish to have been played by Luo Shenqing, but from the looks of it now, it seemed like they were the ones who were being played. He had specially paid a visit to the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast beforehand to inform it that someone wanted to tame it. Firstly, he would be able to obtain the other party's goodwill through that, and secondly, he would be able to turn the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast against Luo Shenqing, making it impossible for the latter to tame it. As expected of someone from the Zhong clan, he was indeed as shameless as he could get. Just that. If you want to pick a bone with someone, look for Luo Shenqing. Why are you assaulting me instead? Feeling deeply stifled, Zhong Xian hurriedly waved his hands and said, I'm not the one who's planning on taming you, but the person who told you that is. His name is Zhong Chun, and he's intentionally saying those words to use you against. Humph. None of you humans are trustworthy. Boom. Before Zhong Xian could finish his words, the tail of the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast suddenly swept in his direction with devastating force. Hoo-la. At the same time, he felt as if the surrounding space had turned into a vortex, firmly holding him in place, preventing him from fleeing. Knowing that he only had himself to rely on in this critical juncture, Zhong Xian desperately willed, Floors. Woo. A book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path, and touching it, a huge influx of information flowed into his mind. The Netherworld Azure Dragon beast cultivates independently, so its comprehension of the dimension-sundering realm isn't too deep. After reading the content in the book, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Despite being a Saint 8 Dan beast and wielding frightening power, the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast had a fatal flaw. Due to cultivating independently, its comprehension and ways of manipulating spatial laws were rather narrow, thus limiting the prowess of its offense. Vicious. Upon realizing that, Zhong Xian swiftly sent the information that he had received over. With a slight sway, Vicious' finger seemed to have flitted through space. The next instant, it suddenly appeared at the flank of the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast, and it pierced forward once more. Catcher. The dominion of the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast, which harnessed the power of dimension sundering, dissipated once more. Not expected a leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle cultivator to possess the means to undo its attacks twice, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast widened its eyes in confusion. Even though it had cultivated independently, that did not mean that it had never encountered human cultivators before. It knew that it was abnormal for a leaving Aperture Realm cultivator to possess the strength to undo its attack, and it didn't expect the latter to be able to see right through its flaws either. Who? Along with the dissipation of the power, Zhongxian felt the pressure weighing on him disappearing once more. Knowing that it would be dangerous for him to remain in the vicinity of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, he decisively flitted 100 meters away through the unbounded Voyager. There was no way he would be able to defeat the massive fellow with his current strength, so he could only stall for time and wait until Luo Shenqing and the others returned. While the strength of those fellows was beneath the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, they should still be able to defeat the latter if they were to coordinate closely with one another and exploit its flaws. There is really something weird about the finger you have here. Harumphing coldly, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast swept its tail over once more. Having its power of dimension sundering foiled twice, it was curious to see whether the other party had managed to do so through sheer luck or real strength. On the other hand, Zhongxian knew that there was no way he would be able to withstand the other party's attack, so he had vicious aim his attack at one of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's flaws once more. Catcher. Just like before, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's dominion was shattered. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast widened its eyes in disbelief. You are able to see through the flaws in my dominion. If it had been an expert of the same caliber who managed to achieve this feat, it would not have thought much of the matter. However, a mere leaving Aperture Realm pinnacle, nobody actually succeeded in crushing its dominion thrice. This had really piqued its intrigue. Seeing that the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast had actually stopped its attack, a thought swiftly arose in Zhongxian's head, and he spoke with an imposing tone. Of course, I am a master teacher. Not only am I able to see through the flaws in your dominion, I can correct them as well. As long as I offer you guidance on your cultivation, your strength will be far greater than it is now. He did not plan for this at the start, but if he could convince the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast into becoming his tamed beast now, the remaining problems would be resolved. Not only so, he would also be able to make use of the strength of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to teach Zhongchun a lesson. He had long thought that that fellow was an eyesore. You, offer me guidance. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast pondered for a moment before calmly replying. If you can defeat me with your own strength, I'll acknowledge you as my teacher. Defeat you with my own strength. This finger over here has a completely different aura from yours, so it should be a type of artifact, right? As for these puppets and sword, they are just external tools. If you can defeat me without relying on any of these, putting aside becoming my teacher, I'll even acknowledge you as my master, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast said. Despite being only at leaving Aperture Realm pinnacle, the young man before it was actually able to see through the flaws in its dominion easily. If it could receive the young man's guidance, it might just really be able to achieve heights far beyond its imagination. Of course, the young man would have to display strength worthy of becoming its teacher and master first. Otherwise, as a proud saint beast who had the dragon bloodline flowing through its veins, how could it bow down to others easily? Defeat you? Zhongxian frowned. To be honest, even his clone was no match for the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, let alone him. Beyond primordial spirit realm, every difference in cultivation realm would result in a vast difference in fighting prowess. This was especially apparent between the phantasm space realm and the dimension sundering realm. They were truly worlds apart from one another. Even while utilizing all of his means, he was only just able to fend off the other party through exploiting the other party's flaws that he had found using the library of Heaven's Path. If he fought the other party barehanded, victory was clearly impossible. Wait a moment. I can use that on it, right? A thought suddenly came to Zhongxian's mind, and he swiftly raised his head to look at the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Since your name is Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, that should mean that you possess rather concentrated dragon bloodline, right? If the other party really possessed the dragon bloodline, perhaps, he might just be able to win by his skills. Indeed, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast said proudly. Since that's the case, A confident smile crept onto Zhongxian's lips as he gazed down on the netherworld azure dragon beast with the disposition of an expert from above. If you can withstand this call of mine, I'll consider it as my loss. Call? The netherworld azure dragon beast was slightly taken aback by the abrupt change in disposition of the young man. That's right. Zhongxian nodded. Then, he took in a deep breath and spoke. Moo. Mao. Two sounds echoed resoundingly through the air, following which, the netherworld azure dragon beast's body suddenly began convulsing. Pada. It collapsed to the ground with white foam spilling out from the edges of its mouths. Chapter 1353 Give him a taste of the floor. The 8 notes of heavenly dragon that he had learned back then allowed him to subdue any beast possessing the dragon's bloodline as long as it had not reached the purity of a pure-blooded dragon. At the start, he had been a little apprehensive at using the 8 notes of heavenly dragon as he thought that it would not be too effective against a Saint 8 Dan beast. On top of that, it also expended a great deal of his zhenqi, which would only result in his weakening. Yet, contrary to his expectations, it worked much better than he predicted. If only he had known that it would be like that, he would have just done so right from the start and spared himself some pain. You are a pure-blooded dragon? While Zhongxian was still in thought, the convulsing netherworld azure dragon beast stared at him with deep terror reflected in its eyes. The hierarchy within the dragon tribe was extremely strict. Even though it was known as the netherworld azure dragon beast, it was still far from matching up to a real member of the dragon tribe. I am not a pure-blooded dragon, but as long as you submit to me, I can help you refine your bloodline and make you stronger. Zhongxian walked over with a domineering attitude, as if saying that he would use the 8 notes of heavenly dragon against it once more if it dared say no. It did not take too long for the netherworld azure dragon beast to lower its head. I'll submit. The fact that the other party was able to voice out the 8 notes of the heavenly dragon meant that the young man was definitely associated with the pure-blooded dragon, even if he was not one of them. Submitting to such a figure was not only not a shame, it could be said to be a blessing even. He would have to be a fool not to grasp such an opportunity. Seeing that the netherworld azure dragon beast had agreed to it, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He had come here only to help Luo Shenqing find the Dongshu gourd, but who would have thought that he would end up taking in a Saint 8 Dan beast instead? However, this was good too. Among the student populace, there were not many who would be able to defeat the netherworld azure dragon beast. With such a tamed beast, he would be able to stand unmatched in the sanctum of sages. Within the cavern, Yuan Xiao was still slowly advancing. Knowing that there was a Saint 8 Dan beast in the cavern, he dared not use his spiritual perception too far nor fly for fear of alarming it. He could only cautiously advance, relying solely on his sense of sight to detect danger. However, the cavern was simply too big. Despite advancing for 10 whole minutes, he still had not reached the end of it. Just where in the world is the netherworld azure dragon beast? After walking a little longer and finding himself back at the entrance of the cavern, Yuan Xiao frowned. He had already walked an entire lap around the cavern, so why was the netherworld azure dragon beast still nowhere to be seen? Could it be that it was out hunting and was not back yet? It would be wonderful if that was the case. He would be able to set up a formation at the entrance of the cavern and activate it as soon as the netherworld azure dragon beast returned to trap it. This way, he would not have to endanger himself by luring it. If that's the case, I should hurry out to inform Luo Shenqing and the others of this matter. With this thought in mind, he extended his spiritual perception throughout the cavern and swiftly swept across it. As expected, the netherworld azure dragon beast was really nowhere to be seen. Thus, he quickly made his way out of the cavern. The fact that the netherworld azure dragon beast was not around meant that they could not rely on it to deal with Zhong Chun and the others anymore, so there was no point for them to wait anymore. Squeezing out of the entrance of the cavern once more, he was just about to beckon Zhongxian over when he suddenly saw a massive figure lying on the ground, licking the young man's feet subserviently. This. Yuan Xiao widened his eyes in horror, unable to believe what he was seeing. Zhongshe, what is going on? How in the world did something like this happen? It's one thing for the netherworld azure dragon beast, which he had been searching all around the cavern for, to be outside, but for it to be lying before Zhongxian, licking his feet subserviently. Am I dreaming? Oh. The netherworld azure dragon beast happened to meet with me while it was on its way back to the cavern, and I happened to be free, so I decided to tame it, Zhongxian replied. You decided to tame it? Yuan Xiao nearly fainted on the spot. That's a Saint 8 Dan beast. It's a figure that we would have to flee as far as possible from when encountering it, and yet, to just decide to tame it. Furthermore, how long has it been? 10 minutes? 20 minutes? In any case, it hasn't even been 30 minutes yet. Suppressing the frenzy that was threatening to turn him hysterical, he looked at Zhongxian deeply for a long while before asking, You are skilled at beast taming too? I did clear the beast tamer examination, Zhongxian replied with a nod. At that very moment, Yuan Xiao felt so stifled that he was not even sure what he should say anymore. It was one thing for that fellow to possess inconceivable prowess in terms of formations, but for him to wield such formidable capabilities as an apothecary, physician, and now a beast tamer as well. Really, was there anything in the world he was incapable of? With the danger of the netherworld azure dragon beast resolved, there was no longer any point in them remaining there. So, Zhongxian waved his hands and said, Let's head over to check up on Brother Luo and the others. Considering how there could be formations within the cavern and that Yuan Xiao dared not use his spiritual perception for fear of alarming the netherworld azure dragon beast, it was understandable that he was oblivious to the commotion outside. However, Luo Shenqing and the others should not have been too far either, so they should have heard the commotion. Yet, for none of them to attempt to come over to check things out, it could only mean that either things were really tight on their side or something had already happened to them. Thus, the both of them quickly headed over to where Luo Shenqing and the others were. Before even arriving, they could feel a powerful gale rushing at them, and pebbles and boulders were flying all around. However, perhaps out of fear that their fight would draw in even more saint beasts, there was an intentional attempt on both sides to suppress their strength such that the shockwaves of their attacks would disappear after traveling a certain distance. Walking through the various boulders flying around the area, Zhongxian and Yuan Xiao soon saw two figures exchanging blows in the air. Every single move they executed harnessed astounding might. Even someone of Zhongxian's prowess would hesitate to close in on them recklessly. Zhongxian could recognize that one of the figures belonged to Luo Shenqing, so he turned to Yuan Xiao and asked, Is he Zhongchun? The person whom Luo Shenqing was facing was a young man in his 30s. He had thick, bushy eyebrows and a pair of long and slender arms. He commanded a wholesome power that seemed to have very few openings for one to exploit. Just like Luo Shenqing, he was at Saint 7 Dan pinnacle, too. Yuan Xiao nodded. Zhongxian took a closer look at the battle, and just as Yuan Xiao had said, the blows that both parties were using were indeed vicious and callous. However, it seemed like both parties were extremely familiar with one another, such that they could actually predict the move of the other party in advance. As such, despite how dangerous the battle was, neither side was actually able to harm the other, even slightly. On the contrary, they felt like brothers of the same lineage trying to feed one another moves. To the side, Bai Hongyin and Yun Lianhai were standing opposite two people from Zhongchun's side with their arms crossed before their chests, watching the battle interestedly from the sidelines. Yuan Xiao walked up to Bai Hongyin and Yun Lianhai and asked with a suppressed voice, Why did the both of them start fighting with one another? Was the plan not to put on a show to stop Zhongchun's advancement? Why did Luo Shenqing end up fighting so seriously with the other party? We tried to stop him, but Zhongchun proposed that they settle the problem through force, saying that the winner would gain the right to tame the netherworld azure dragon beast whereas the loser would have to scram as far away as he could. Provoked by those words, Brother Luo ended up fighting with him. However, as they are on the same level and are simply too familiar with each other's moves as well, the battle has dragged on till now, Bai Hongyin explained. Then, she suddenly recalled a matter and asked with a frown, Where is the netherworld azure dragon beast? You didn't lure it over. Regarding that. Recalling what he had seen earlier, Yuan Xiao was not sure how he could explain this matter to Bai Hongyin, so he shook his head and said, It would be best for you to ask Zhongsha instead. Bai Hongyin shot Yuan Xiao a perplexed look, but she still turned to Zhongxian and asked, Zhongsha, how did the matter with the netherworld azure dragon beast go? Oh. I fought with it earlier, and Zhongxian was just about to explain the matter that had just happened when a powerful shockwave suddenly burst forth from ahead. In the sky, Zhongchun forcefully pushed Luo Shenqing away before retreating from the battlefield. Then, he noticed Zhongxian and Yuan Xiao's figures and frowned. The both of you are actually fine? The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast had clearly marched off angrily to deal with the two of them, so how could they have returned completely unharmed? Zhongchun's words made Luo Shenqing realize that there was something amiss with the situation as well, and he questioned, "What do you mean by that?" "Shenqing, that fellow met with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast before us and told it that you were going to tame it in order to provoke it. This way, it would harbor hostility toward us and attack with the utmost aggression if we were to ever encounter it," Yuan Xiao explained. Zhongxian had already explained the matter to him while they were making their way over, and this made him realize that he had fallen for the other party's ploy too. "Indeed, I did meet with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast before you. I knew that you were intentionally trying to block my way, but tough luck for you, that happened to work in my favor. You know, I was actually quite curious to see how powerful an enraged Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast would be." Zhongchun chuckled heartily, admitting to the matter forthrightly. However, he still could not help but direct questioning gazes toward Zhongxian and Yuan Xiao. "The both of you should have encountered with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, so how can you be completely fine?" It was no wonder he was perplexed by the matter. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was a Saint 8 Dan beast, and even he would be no match for it when it was in an enraged state. Yet, those two actually managed to escape unscathed from its clutches. This was simply illogical. His plan had been to intentionally stall Luo Shenqing from saving the others, thus causing two of his companions to sustain some injuries and be incapacitated. After which, he would lure the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast over to deal with Luo Shenqing. Through this, not only would he be able to sabotage Luo Shenqing, he would be able to earn the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's goodwill too. If the two of them managed to return unscathed, could it mean that they did not manage to meet with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast? Instead of answering Zhongchun's question, Zhongxian instead asked, "You are Zhongchun?" "That's right. Who are you?" Zhongchun asked with a frown. For a mere leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle fellow to address him directly with such an insolent tone, he sure had guts. "You don't need to know who I am. I heard that you have intentions of courting the little princess of the Luo clan. Is that true?" Zhongxian asked. "What are you getting at?" Zhongchun asked with narrowed eyes. He turned to Luo Shenqing and asked coldly, "Luo Shenqing, is he your man?" Zhongsha. Hearing how his younger sister had been brought up, a frown emerged on Luo Xuanqing's forehead as well. Zhongxian turned to Luo Shenqing and said with a firm voice, "Brother Luo, just tell me if he harbors any inappropriate thoughts toward the little princess." "Humph, he's just a toad lusting over the flesh of a swan. How could someone like him possibly be worthy of my younger sister?" Luo Shenqing was not sure what Zhongxian was getting at either, but hearing about the matter between Zhongchun and his younger sister still made him harumph in displeasure. In the first place, he was already filled with many dissatisfactions about the Zhong clan, especially with the disappearance of the young prodigy. Yet, that bastard Zhongchun still dared to harass his younger sister. If not for the limitations of his strength, he would have had Zhongchun pummeled to the point where not even his parents recognized him. "Since Brother Luo has said such words, he really does deserve a beating," Zhongxian said with an affirmative nod, seemingly making up his mind on something. "Deserve a beating? Ha, you are thinking of beating me up?" Zhongchun was still wondering what this nobody was up to, but upon hearing that the other party was dreaming of beating him up, he felt so enraged that he actually began laughing instead. He was one of the top experts in the inner sanctum as well as an influential offspring of the Zhong clan. There was no one who would not shudder before his wrath. And yet, a leaving Aperture Realm nobody actually uttered such arrogant words to his face, showing a complete disregard for him. "Zhongsha." Luo Shenqing was bewildered by those words, too. Did someone knock Zhongxian silly earlier? Zhongchun was a figure who even he had trouble defeating, and that young man actually declared that he would give the other party a beating. "Oh, you are smarter than I thought." I thought that I would have to repeat those words a few more times before you were able to get my point, Zhongxian replied condescendingly. You. Very well. I hope you possess the strength to back up the arrogant words you have spouted here. With a cold sneer, Zhongchun flicked his hand, and an overwhelming pressure immediately crushed down upon Zhongxian. Give him a taste of the floor. Zhongxian snapped his fingers leisurely, showing complete nonchalance toward Zhongchun's offense. Roar. The next moment, a massive shadow abruptly covered the entire area above them. Following which, something reminiscent of a whip suddenly swept over with frightening speed. Pang! Before Zhongchun could even process what was going on, he had been sent flying into a nearby cliff, creating a huge pit in it. Chapter 1354 The Strength of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. There was a moment of complete silence as everyone stared at the sky with a dazed look in their eyes. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast is heeding Zhongshi's commands. Luo Xuanqing's lips twitched as he finally awoken from his dazed state. He had seen that massive fellow from afar the first time he came over, and it was incomparably ferocious. Most Saint 8 Dan cultivators would struggle to be a match for it. It was for that reason that he had gone to the extent of forging out the soul-binding golden bead to knock it out so that he could sneak into the cavern without facing the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. It was a complete coincidence that Zhongchun appeared just then, so he had decided to lure the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to the latter instead. But before they could even carry out that plan, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast had suddenly flown over itself, and from the looks of it, it seemed like it was completely devoted to carrying out Zhongxian's orders, not daring to disobey them in the least. Luo Shenqing quickly turned his gaze over to Yuan Xiao, seeking an explanation. Perhaps harboring the same thoughts in mind as well, the others also turned their gazes over. Don't look at me, I don't know what's going on either. Facing the gazes from the crowd, Yuan Xiao could only shrug helplessly as well. Earlier, I went into the cavern to search for the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, intending to taunt it and lure it out, but I wasn't able to find anything at all in the end. But as soon as I walked out of the cavern, I saw the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast lying right before Zhongshe, licking his feet. I have no idea what happened in the time that I was gone. You say that it was licking Zhongshe's feet? Luo Xuanqing's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. Are you saying that Zhongshe has already tamed the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast? Just look at that. Is there even any doubt about it? It should be apparent to anyone who isn't blind, Yuan Xiao exclaimed. But Luo Shenqing did not dare believe what he was seeing. It has only been 20 minutes so far, and he has already managed to tame a dimension-sundering realm saint beast despite being at leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle himself. Fast in terms of forging pills? Possible. Fast in terms of neutralizing poison? Possible. Fast in terms of setting up compounded formations? Arguably possible. But taming beasts required the cultivation of intimacy and feelings between the beast and the beast tamer. To succeed in such a short period of time, are you actually some kind of love guru? Not even 9-star beast tamers could accomplish something like this. Seeing the disbelief in Luo Xuanqing's eyes, Yuan Xiao asked, before meeting this fellow, would you have believed it if someone told you that it's possible to set up a grade 8 formation faster than one can activate a formation plate? This. Luo Shenqing was stifled. Coming from the main family of the Luo clan, he had seen plenty of formidable formation masters. In fact, he had many opportunities to meet with and interact with 9-star master teachers too, but not even they were able to set up formations that swiftly. Even his younger sister, who was known to possess unparalleled talent, could not come close to that speed. Would you believe it if someone told you that it's possible for one to remain completely fine after being stung by the Crimson-tail Wasp King and even poison the latter to death? Yuan Xiao pressed his point on. Would you believe it if someone told you that it's possible for a cultivator to send a lightning tribulation fleeing in fear? Luo Shenqing did not know how he should respond to those words. All along, he had viewed his younger sister as the very peak of talent in the master-teacher continent, and he was only second to his younger sister. However, upon seeing this fellow, he realized that he might have been too narrow-minded. The world sure was far bigger than he had thought. While Luo Xuanqing's group was discussing with hushed voices, Zhong Chun pushed himself out from the cliff face and flew over with a furious look on his face. Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, what are you doing? We have a deal with one another. He had not thought that the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast would turn against him all of a sudden. Deal? That doesn't matter anymore. Since my master has asked me to give you a taste of the floor, I have no choice but to imprint that flavor in your mind. Come, be obedient and don't fight back, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast replied nonchalantly as it sent another tail whip toward Zhong Chun. Previously, that human had promised it valuable treasures in exchange for a truce. However, since it had already acknowledged a master, it could not possibly commit acts that were contrary to its master's orders. Catcher. Driving its dimension-sundering realm strength to its limits, the surrounding space around it seemed to have suddenly froze in place, thus hindering Zhong Chun's attempts to retreat. As a result, it ended up being slammed into the cliff face once more. This time, his state was even worse than before. His internal organs had been jolted out of position, and several of his bones had splintered. Before he could climb out from the cliff face, a sudden spurt of blood escaped from his mouth, and his face paled. Zhong Chun swallowed a pill, and after recovering slightly from his severe wounds, he pushed himself out from the depression in the cliff and stared at the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast with gritted teeth. You actually acknowledged this fellow as your master? In order to tame this fellow, he had prepared many good items, and he had been extremely confident of success. Yet, who would have thought that within a short span of 20 minutes, the Saint Beast was actually tamed by another person and even launching a barrage of attack against her? How dare you speak of my master in such disrespectful terms? You are courting death. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast narrowed its eyes menacingly as it swept its tail over furiously. The might of its assault was far stronger than the previous 2 times, such that it nearly burst even the space in the valley itself. In the form of a black streak, its tail appeared before Zhong Chun, carrying might so imposing that it threatened to tear him apart. Zhong Chun instantaneously realized that there was no way he would be able to withstand that attack with his current strength, so he gritted his teeth, whipped out a jade token, and crushed it without any hesitation. Wang. A series of ripples reminiscent of flowing water appeared before Zhong Chun, and in the face of the water-like barrier, the might of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's tail whip vanished without a trace. Grand Cosmos Protective Amulet. What an extravagant move! Yuan Xiao remarked in astonishment. Grand Cosmos Protective Amulet? Zhong Xian repeated doubtfully. It's a protective amulet that only 9-star master teachers are capable of forging. Once activated, as long as the opponent's cultivation isn't beyond Saint 9 Dan, one will be able to withstand any assault with ease, Yuan Xiao explained. As expected of a genius from the Zhong clan, to think that they would have such an item in their possession as well, Zhong Xian was astounded as well. The fact that the protective amulet could only be forged by 9-star master teachers and that it could withstand the attack of any opponent whose cultivation was not beyond Saint 9 Dan was sufficient to show that the artifact was of immense value. Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, don't think that I am afraid of you. You might be strong, but you'll need far more than that to kill me. Seeing as his protective amulet successfully intercepted that devastating attack, Zhong Chun heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, however, he could not help but feel a pinch in his heart. He had spent a heavy price in order to obtain the protective amulet, and it could almost be said to be the most valuable artifact he had on him. It was his final trump card to fall back on in a critical situation, but who would have thought that he would have ended up using it there? Paying no heed to Zhong Chun's fury, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast continued flicking its tail over, causing the water-like barrier to ripple endlessly. Seeing that the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was relying solely on brute force, Zhong Xian shook his head. You won't be able to break the protective amulet that way. Follow my instructions. Gather your strength in your tail and pierce the 0.3 chi left of the intersection of the ripples. Yes. Hearing that, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast nodded before gathering all of its might at its tail and piercing it forward at a point. Catcher. A shattering sound echoed in the air, and as if a balloon popped by a needle, the ripples in the air abruptly burst. Pu. With his protective amulet destroyed, Zhong Chun swiftly succumbed to the overwhelming might of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. His chest deflated inward as his body was slammed into the air, and fresh blood spewed endlessly from his mouth. This time, it was not just Luo Shenqing and the others who were shocked speechless. Those who had come along with Zhong Chun also widened their eyes in disbelief, unable to believe what they were seeing. No matter how strong a protective amulet was, it was still impossible for it to provide absolute defense. After all, it was only an artifact. There was no way it would possess the flexibility to adapt to situations like a 9-star master teacher. However, an artifact on the level of the Grand Cosmos Protective Amulet would have already been refined to the point where no one of Saint Nine Dan and beneath would be able to see through its flaws. Yet, that young man was actually able to see through it with just a look. Just how was that possible? Zhong Chun flew out from the cliff face and furiously roared, "Who in the world are you? This is a grudge between me and Luo Shenqing. Are you certain that you want to barge into this matter? Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Blood could be seen trickling down the edges of his lips, and a look of absolute fury was reflected on his features. Taming the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast should have been a competition between him and Luo Shenqing, and that young man should only have been an assistant recruited by Luo Shenqing. Typically speaking, he would not even have bothered to spare someone of that young man's caliber a second glance, but to think that the young man would actually cross him time and time again. Do you know what the consequences of offending the Zhong clan are? With just a word from me, I can make it so that every single thing you attempt to do in the Sanctum of Sages will be fraught with difficulty. Do I know the consequences of my actions? Of course I do, Zhong Xian replied nonchalantly before turning his gaze to the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast once more. Continue pummeling him. I don't want to hear the slightest rubbish from his mouth anymore. Yes. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast nodded before abruptly charging forward. Despite its immense size, its speed was truly no joke. In the blink of an eye, its sharp claws were already right before Zhong Chun. With its medium of attack switching from its tail to its claws, the offensive might of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast instantaneously surged by a significant degree. Not expecting the young man to actually disregard him, choosing adamantly to make a move on him despite all that had been said, Zhong Chun felt so enraged that he could have vomited blood. He swiftly flicked his wrist and drew a sword before piercing it forward to defend against the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's offense. Zhong Chun's swordsmanship was vastly different from the two-sword quintessences that Zhong Xian had comprehended. His movements were simple and concise, there was no particular elegance or beauty to them. But for some reason, his swordsmanship felt extremely heavy, and it carried an unstoppable momentum to it, as if a comet falling from the high heavens above. Not too bad, I must say, Zhong Xian remarked. The sword that Zhong Chun wielded was at least on par with the Lingshu sword, which meant that it was a Saint high-tier artifact at the minimum. Furthermore, he could tell that the other party possessed an understanding of swordsmanship that was far deeper than Shui Qianrou's, at least reaching the level of half-quintessence. It was no wonder the other party was able to draw with Luo Shenqing in a battle. His strength was indeed not to be underestimated. However, as frightening as his strength might have been, it was still far from matching up to the Saint 8 Dan Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. The claws continued advancing forward, unimpeded by the sea of sword chi standing in its path. Then, with a light grasp, pang! The sea of sword chi immediately dissipated without a trace. Wang! With a resounding clang, Zhong Chun's sword was knocked into the cliff face, and Zhong Chun himself coughed a mouthful of blood. 8 bones of his ribcage had shattered under the impact, and crimson blood dyed his body. Knowing that he could very well lose his life if this continued, Zhong Chun bellowed, "You lot, listen to my instructions. We'll fend off that massive beast together." Yes. The other 4 young men who had accompanied him there swiftly flew over. These 4 were roughly around the same strength as Yuan Xiao and the others, each of them reaching Saint 7 Dan. If the 5 of them were to put their strength together, they would indeed be a match for the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Collaborating with one another, the 5 experts swiftly formed a light noose and hooked it around the neck of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Zhenqi bind? They have really come prepared. Bai Hongyin harumphed coldly. What's a Zhenqi bind? Zhong Xian asked. It's a technique that high-tier beast tamers commonly use. In essence, it's a noose formed by putting the zhunqi of a huge crowd together to bind a beast. Once caught within the zhunqi bind, it will be difficult for even a Saint 8 Dan beast to be able to struggle free. Bai Hongyin said. Many high-tier beast tamers use this method to capture a saint beast before slowly taking their time to make the beast submit to them. Hula. While they were speaking, the zhunqi bind finally tightened around the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast's neck. In response to that, the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast roared furiously and raised its claws to tear it apart. Peng. The zhunqi bind was torn apart. The 5 experts immediately felt a suffocating sensation assaulting their chests, and as if being struck by a massive hammer, all of them plummeted down from the sky. Even with the prowess of all 5 of them combined, they were still no match for the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast. Chapter 1355 1-on-1, so that's Saint 8 Dan. Looking at how the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast was able to deal with the 5 experts with absolute ease, Luo Xianqing felt deeply envious. Having comprehended the power of dimension sundering, Saint 8 Dan experts were able to tear a rift in the world and create their own miniature world when they activate their dominion. Within this miniature world, they were the absolute conquerors. Unless one had achieved the same level of cultivation as them, otherwise there was no way to defeat them. Zhong Chun might be one of the strongest students of the inner sanctum, but even he didn't wield the ability to breach this gap in strength. Truly formidable. Zhong Xian uttered in agreement too. He thought that the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast had used its full strength against him previously, but from the looks of it now, it hadn't even brought out a tenth of its true strength back then. Otherwise, he would have been crushed into minced meat before he could even bring out Vicious Finger. If I could wield such strength too, I would be in a much better position to ask for Luo Ruoxin's hand in marriage in the Luo clan. A glint flashed across Zhong Xian's eyes. Saint 8 Dan might not mean much to top-notch sage clans like the Luo clan, but it was already a representation of the top-tier fighting prowess of the master-teacher continent. Considering how he was only 20 this year, if he could reach that level before the time for Luo Ruoxin's engagement, he should be able to make the Luo clan take him seriously. Boom boom boom. While Zhong Xian was still contemplating over such thoughts, the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast swiftly struck out at the 5 experts, slamming all of them into the nearby cliff. Lad, what hero are you if you can only rely on your tamed beast to fight with us? Do you dare to fight me one-on-one? Knowing that the odds were not in his favor, Zhong Chun spat through gritted teeth. You want to fight me one-on-one? Ha, a Saint 7 Dan pinnacle expert like you is actually challenging me, a Saint 5 Dan cultivator, to a one-on-one? You sure are a hero. Zhong Xian sneered disdainfully. While he wielded the strength to rival opponents stronger than him, he knew that he was still a far way off from matching up to a Saint 7 Dan pinnacle expert. Naturally, he wouldn't be so foolish as to fall for Zhong Chun's taunting. He would only be asking for a beating if he were to accept that duel. I'll suppress my cultivation down to your level, Zhong Chun added. Zhong Xian waved his hand derisively. I'm not free. As a beast tamer, the strength of his tamed beast was considered as a part of his strength too, so there was nothing dishonorable in his actions by the conventional standards of the master-teacher continent. Since he was able to make their life a living hell without making a move, there was no need for him to soil his hands at all. On the other hand, seeing that nothing that he said was working, Zhong Chun was on the verge of going berserk. As an individual who was born with astounding talent, his life had always been smooth sailing, be it back in the Zhong clan or at the Sanctum of Sages. He had never suffered such grievances before. You coward! Zhong Chun clenched his fists so tightly that his fingers nearly fractured from the pressure. The Netherworld Azure Dragon beast was simply too strong, it would be nigh impossible for them to defeat it. Even if he were to utilize the power of his bloodline, he would only be able to barely escape. However, the price that he would have to pay for tapping into his bloodline was extremely heavy, such that he dared not to use it lightly. As such, the best solution out of the current predicament he was in was to defeat that young man. As long as he could subdue that young man instantaneously, not only would be able to exact vengeance for the humiliation he had suffered, He would also be able to force the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to obey his commands and teach Luo Shenqing a lesson too. Otherwise, if others were to learn of the humiliation he had been put through here, how could he possibly uphold his position and honor in the Sanctum of Sages? You're right, I'm a coward. Zhong Xian nodded. Zhong Chun staggered on the spot. Other cultivators, especially ones that were as young as them, would turn blind in rage and charge forth furiously as soon as they heard those words. Yet, the fellow before him was actually able to remain completely nonchalant to his provocations, and the smug look on his face even suggested that he was proud of his cowardice. How could he be so thick-skinned? Tell me what Luo Shenqing gave you. I'll pay you the same price as long as you are willing to have a duel with me. Zhong Chun took in a deep breath and said. Since that fellow had followed Luo Shenqing here to help him tame the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, it was safe to assume that the latter would have offered him handsome rewards in exchange. Right now, he was offering the same sum of money just to have a duel with him. Surely that fellow wouldn't turn him down with such a generous offer. As long as that huge fellow didn't make a move, teaching a mere leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle cultivator would be a walk in the park for him. Brother Luo gave me 5 Pinnacle Spirit Stones. If you can take out that many too, not only will I have a duel with you, I'll even allow your entire group to come at me simultaneously. Upon hearing Zhong Chun's offer, Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. Once again, Zhong Chun was stifled speechless. You were going to say 1 Pinnacle Spirit Stone just now, right? I clearly heard you say 1. It is just a moment ago that you were professing your cowardice haughtily, but as soon as I said that I will pay you for it, you immediately accepted the offer and even said that the 5 of us can come at you together. Do you really need to be that greedy? Fine, I'll pay you 5 Pinnacle Spirit Stones. However, I don't have any of it with me at the moment. As long as you agree to have a duel with me, regardless of whether you win or lose, I'll apply for those 5 Pinnacle Spirit Stones as soon as I return to the Sanctum of Sages and compensate you. Even though Zhong Chun felt so furious that he could explode, he still forced himself to calm down. Hearing that Zhong Chun didn't have any Pinnacle Spirit Stone with him, Zhong Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, why don't you write down a debt note first to indicate that you owe me 5 Pinnacle Spirit Stone? Once I obtain the debt note, I'll have the duel with you. Very well. Afraid that Zhong Xian would back out, Zhong Chun didn't dare to hesitate for too long before making a decision. He took out a paper, bit his finger, and wrote a line of words on it. This is a debt note writing using my blood, so it contains the power of my bloodline. There's no way for me to shirk off the debt with this. Zhong Xian took the debt note and examined it closely. It was only after confirming that there was no trick hidden within the debt note did he finally nod his head in satisfaction. He turned to the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast and said, let go of them. Yes, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast replied. The power of dimension sundering which was trapping the Zhong Chun's group in place dissipated. Hoo. The 5 of them immediately plummeted to the ground, but fortunately, they still managed to stabilize their posture in midair, thus avoiding an embarrassing fall to the ground. Take this. Zhong Chun took out a jade bottle and poured out 5 pills. He gave 1 each to the other members before swallowing 1 himself, and only then did he feel his injuries alleviating slightly. The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was simply too powerful. Even with the 5 of them collaborating with one another, they still came nowhere close to being a match for it. All right, suppress your cultivation. Zhong Xian allowed them a long moment of recuperation before uttering nonchalantly, I know. Suppressing his cultivation, Zhong Chun's aura swiftly fell from that of a Saint 7 Dan Pinnacle to one that was of equivalent level to Zhong Xian, Saint 5 Dan leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle. The suppression of his cultivation might have led to a dip in his fighting prowess, but at the same time, it also helped to alleviate the severity of his injuries as well, thus enhancing his mind, spirit, and soul. Since it's a formal duel, I hope that you can obey by our agreement earlier. I won't unseal my cultivation, but similarly, you shouldn't have the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast interfere in the duel either. Zhong Chun harumphed coldly. Of course. Zhong Xian replied. That's good then. A cold glint flickered across Zhong Chun's eyes as a hint of savagery emerged on his face. Currently, the only thing that was holding him back was the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. As long as the latter didn't make a move, a mere leaving aperture realm cultivator couldn't possibly pose a threat to him. With his superior comprehension of battle and talent, he would be able to crush the other party with ease. Even though the young man had managed to tame the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, Zhong Chun felt that the other party had used some kind of unique means instead. Over the many years of heritage, beast tamers had come up with many innovative ways to make powerful beasts submitting to them, and there were a handful of them which didn't require one to possess too high of a cultivation. As such, he didn't have too high of a view of Zhong Xian's fighting prowess either. "Let's begin," Zhong Chun bellowed as he prepared to make his move. "Hold it for a moment," Zhong Xian suddenly interjected. "What's wrong? Are you having regrets now? You must be joking. I just want to suggest having the other 4 of your companion to suppress their cultivation and join the battle as well. I fear that you'll be crushed if you were to face me alone." Zhong Xian shook his head and said. It was not that he was looking down on Zhong Chun, but it was simply a fact that there would be no one of the same cultivation realm who could possibly be a match for him. He had already made the other party write a debt note for him, so the least he could do was to offer the other party some benefits in return for the pinnacle spirit stones. After all, he was a principled man. Zhong Shi. It'll be best not to underestimate Zhong Chun. Even amongst Saint Seven Dan experts, there are very few who could match him. Luo Shenqing couldn't help but advise. As one who had competed with him for the longest of time, he knew very well what Zhong Chun was capable of. In the first place, it was already worrying how Zhong Xian had accepted a one-on-one match with Zhong Chun, and yet, he was still insisting on a 1-on-5. Wasn't he being a little too conceited over here? "It's fine." Zhong Xian waved his hand to gesture for Luo Shenqing not to worry. He had just reinforced his cultivation and hadn't found someone to try his hand out on yet. Since the 5 of them happened to be around, why not? But Luo Shenqing still wanted to persuade Zhong Xian against it, but in this moment, Yuan Xiao stepped forward and interjected. Zhong Shi must have an idea in mind for proposing something like this, so it should be fine. Besides, given how Zhong Shi was able to even scare a lightning tribulation away, he might just wield the strength to subdue Zhong Chun. That's true. Nodding in realization, Luo Shenqing decided to remain silent and watch the situation first. Nevertheless, he still felt that it was important to remind the crowd to remain on their guard. Most likely, the reason why Zhong Chun challenged Zhong Shi to a 1-on-1 is to make use of this opportunity to capture Zhong Shi and use him against us. So, as soon as you realize that things are going awry, don't hesitate to leap forward and save him. The others nodded. Luo Shenqing had competed with Zhong Chun for many years, so his grasp over the latter's temperament and style of doing things was bound to be rather accurate. "You are the one who said those words yourself. I hope that you don't come to regret your decision." Even though Zhong Chun was so furious that he could explode, he knew that the situation was currently disadvantageous toward him. Luo Shenqing and the others would surely move as soon as they realized that something was amiss, so he beckoned the others over and sent a telepathic message over. Later on, "I'll be focusing on attacking that fellow. What you all should do is to help to stall Luo Shenqing and the others, along with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, from saving him. As long as you can keep them at bay for a single breath, I'll definitely be able to put that fellow back in his place." Hearing those instructions, the other 4 members of Zhong Chun's team nodded discreetly. They also felt deeply stifled after being pummeled by the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, and if there was an opportunity to get back at the culprit, they wouldn't hesitate to play a part too. Hula. After deciding on their course of action, the 4 members suppressed their cultivation as well and stood in a circle around Zhong Xian, encircling the young man. "Let's begin." With a resounding roar, the 5 of them made a move simultaneously. Even with their cultivation suppressed, their experience, eye of discernment, and reflexes as Saint Seven Dan experts still remained, not to mention that they were still top geniuses of the inner sanctum. Their zhunqi swiftly permeated the entire valley, and it took only an instant for a barrage of sword qi, saber qi, and the sword to congregate all around Zhong Xian, leaving no space for the latter to escape at all. Formidable. The bodies of Luo Shenqing and the others stiffened after seeing this sight. In order to deal with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, Zhongchun and the others had practiced a grade 8 collaborative formation. While their cultivation was lowered to leaving aperture realm, the tier of their formation still remained the same. With their combined might, even a Saint 7 Dan primary stage cultivator could be killed in the blink of an eye. Will Zhongshe be fine? Bai Hongyan asked worriedly. The others also directed apprehensive gazes over. They had completely no confidence that they would be able to withstand the onslaught of the 5 of them were they to be in Zhongshen's place, even if they were to suppress their cultivation down to Saint 6 Dan pinnacle instead of Saint 5 Dan pinnacle. Thus, they swiftly drove their zhenqi, preparing to dive forward to save Zhongshen. However, in this moment, a voice carrying a tinge of confusion sounded in the air. Is this all you are capable of after collaborating with one another? A moment later, the voice turned from one of confusion turned into one of disappointment. This sure is a huge letdown. Peng 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 peng. A total of 5 crisp echoes sounded in the air, and following which, all of the sword chi and saber chi vanished from the surroundings, and the 5 experts were sent flying in the distance like footballs. They were embedded back into the cliff face once more, and fresh blood flowed profusely down the edges of their lips. For an instant, one could see utter despair in their eyes before their heads abruptly hung loosely from their neck, passing out. This. Luo Shenqing and the others widened their eyes in horror. Turning into the direction of the voice, they saw Zhongshen clicking his tongue in disappointment as he clapped the dust off his hand while walking back toward them with a look that seemed to be saying the top shore is lonely. Just when will I be able to find a worthy rival in this world? Chapter 1356 Distorted Space. To be honest, Zhongshen was really disappointed. He had thought that Zhongchun, as one of the top geniuses of the Zhong clan, in collaboration with 4 other experts, should at least have been able to pose a challenge to him even when they had their cultivation suppressed down to the same level. However, as soon as they began launching attacks, he realized that he had been expecting too much from them. But thinking about it again, this was to be expected. Previously, when his zhenqi cultivation had just reached leaving aperture realm primary stage, he had already been able to successfully clear the Jiao corridor. Now, with his physical body cultivation and soul cultivation brought up to an equivalent level, there was no way Zhongchun and the others, no matter how talented they were, could possibly catch up. Stretching his back lazily, Zhongshen turned back to the crowd and said, "It'll probably be an entire day before they wake up. Don't worry, I'll have the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast look after them, so they won't be harmed by other Saint Beast. Since we have time now, let's quickly find the Dongshu Gourd." Even though Zhongshen detested the Zhong clan for how frivolously they were treating Luo Ruoxin, it had not come to the point where he wished for their deaths. If he simply left Zhongchun and the others lying unconscious there, it would not be long before they were eaten by the other Saint Beasts in the valley. In a sense, that could be considered indirect murder by them. By having the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast guard them, first and foremost, no Saint Beasts would dare cause any trouble, and secondly, they would not dare to enter the cavern anymore even if they did regain consciousness. Suppressing the astonishment in his heart, Luo Shenqing nodded. Very well. To see his longtime rival, Zhongchun, being knocked out so easily. This little friend that he had met just a day before sure was not an ordinary figure. Given the setback and humiliation that Zhongchun has suffered today, there's no way he'll let this matter go easily. You must proceed carefully in the Sanctum of Sages from this day onward. If he attempts to find any trouble with you, make sure to inform me as soon as possible, and I'll help you settle the matter, Luo Shenqing told Zhongshen telepathically as the group made their way over to the cavern. He knew Zhongchun very well. As an offspring of the esteemed Zhong clan, as well as an 8-star high-tier master teacher, the latter would not resort to despicable deeds. However, with the power and influence the latter wielded in the Sanctum of Sages, he did not even have to resort to despicable deeds in order to make life difficult for others. For one, just a stand made by Zhongchun was more than sufficient reason for others to shun Zhongshen like the plague. Considering how Zhongshen had offended Zhongchun while trying to stand up for him, he was bound to get into lots of trouble in the future. Hearing those words, Zhongshen nodded. In truth, while a huge part of the reason he had decided to teach Zhongchun a lesson was due to the latter harboring lustful thoughts for Luo Ruoxin, He also felt that this was a good opportunity to win this future brother-in-law of his over to his side. In a sense, that would kill two birds with one stone, definitely well worth the trouble he would potentially face in the future as a result of this conflict. He could feel that Luo Shenqing no longer perceived him as an ordinary talented friend but a close buddy now. Of course, it seemed to still be a little too early for him to talk about his relationship with Luo Ruoxin with the other party, but nevertheless, the deepening of their friendship would surely be of great help to him in winning Luo Ruoxin's hand in marriage in the future. In any case, his strength was not up to par yet, and he had not unlocked the Sanctum Head token either, so it was still too early for him to make a move. It would be good for him to work on Luo Shenqing for the time being instead. With the threat of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast resolved, the group swiftly advanced into the cavern. While the entrance to the cavern was narrow, its interior was vast. The cavern seemed to extend along with the entire mountain range, meandering up and down. Shenqing, I took a look at the place earlier, but I didn't notice anything peculiar in here, Yuan Xiao remarked. He had examined the entire place thoroughly while searching for the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, but it was just an ordinary cavern within the mountain. There was nothing peculiar about it at all. Instead of replying to Yuan Xiao's remark, Luo Shenqing turned to Yun Lianhai and asked, "What about you? Did you notice anything?" Considering how Yun Lianhai was a treasure hunter and possessed natural sensitivity toward treasures, there was a good chance that he could sense something that they could not. "Let me give it a try." Yun Lianhai took a deep breath and closed his eyes. A droplet of blood flew up to his glabella, and a glaring third eye abruptly opened up between his brows. It began scanning the surroundings intently. A moment later, Yun Lianhai shook his head and said, "I don't sense anything either. Is this the ability that treasure hunters possess? I guess there is really no way for me to learn that," Zhongxian remarked in wonderment. He had used his Eye of Insight to assess Yun Lianhai's state earlier, and he had concluded that the latter was using his bloodline ability to scan the surroundings for artifacts rich in spiritual energy. However, what was unique about that ability was how it could see through obstacles, like how a compass could detect the magnetic field of an object even from a distance away. Since the very foundation of this ability lay in the unique bloodline of the Yun clan, it could be said to be an innate talent. It was not a skill that one could learn through hard work. Ultimately, while cultivation opened up a world of possibilities, cultivators were still fundamentally limited by their innate talent in many ways. Using an example from the world Zhongxian previously lived in, it would be just like how no matter a policeman trained himself, there was no way he would be able to become a K9. With this, Zhongxian's hopes of picking up the art of treasure hunting were dashed. "Zhongshe, what about you?" Luo Shenqing asked. The others also turned their heads over in curiosity. It was just a short few days since they had first come to know one another, but this young man had already brought them an entire life's worth of shock. They were interested to know if this miraculous young man would be able to notice anything amiss or not. In response, Zhongxian discreetly concentrated on the lines of insight in his eyes and began examining his surroundings carefully. Unless a formation was active, the Library of Heaven's Path would not be able to perceive it. Thus, he could only rely on the Eye of Insight to search for clues. But very quickly, he shook his head and said, "I can't find anything either." As powerful as the Eye of Insight was, it was limited by his own cultivation. He was unable to discern items that were too much stronger than he was, just like how he had not been able to find Kong Shi's folded space back at the Saint Ascension platform. Seeing that they were making no progress at all, Bai Hongyan frowned in impatience. "Just where is it? Luo Shenqing, stop keeping us in suspense." "Haha, I was just curious to see if you would be able to find it," Luo Shenqing replied with a light chuckle. "To be honest, I wouldn't have been able to find the location of the formation myself either. It was my younger sister who managed to deduce the rough location of the formation's life gate through a map, and I only managed to locate it by following her instructions." The little princess was able to deduce the location of the formation's life gate through a map. Everyone gasped in shock. Wasn't the little princess of the Luo clan a little too talented? It was already an incredible feat to be able to tell that there was an ancient domain here just by looking at the map, but to be able to find the rough location of the formation's life gate as well. That was really inconceivable. This is a map that my younger sister drew for me. It's using this that I was able to find the core of the formation and enter the ancient domain where the Dongshu Gourd is. Luo Xianqing flicked his wrist, and a palm-sized jade token appeared in his hand. He tapped on it lightly, and amid a brilliant shimmer of light, faint mist emanated from the jade token and shrouded the entire cavern. Vaguely within the mist, one could see rocks and crevices. In a sense, it was somewhat similar to a painting. It slowly fused together with the real world until there was no way of distinguishing the two from one another anymore. What incredible manipulation of space! Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. The mist emanating from the jade token was not a type of ink or formation, it was a manifestation of a type of spatial energy. To be able to paint on space and fuse it together with reality, this was truly an incredible technique. After the mist fused fully with the cavern, the jade token floated up from Luo Xuanqing's hand and began drifting forward. The group quickly followed behind the jade token. It did not take them long to arrive before a dead end. A towering stone wall blocked their path ahead, preventing them from advancing any further. Upon reaching this point, the jade token also stopped advancing and spun on the spot. Luo Xianqing turned around and said to the group, "Due to the massive design of the formation, the life gate moves with time. It's located at a different location from where it was the previous time I was here, but since the jade token has stopped here, this should be it." Without any hesitation, Zhong Xian immediately activated his eye of insight to look at the space before him. There's indeed a distortion in space here. Zhong Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. With the location confirmed, he was indeed able to tell that something was amiss in the area. There was a sesame-sized spatial distortion right beneath the jade token. If one was not sure where to look, it would have been practically impossible to find it. After all, it was not too rare for slight spatial distortions to arise. Even a bunch of transcendent mortal cultivators putting their might together would suffice to create a slight spatial distortion, so most cultivators would instinctively turn a blind eye to it. It was no wonder the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, a Saint 8 Dan beast, would fail to notice the secrets hidden within the cavern despite living here for so many years. Just how in the world was one supposed to find something like this? At the same time, to be able to deduce this much just by looking at a map and even craft a jade token specially for it. Zhong Xian could not help but feel deeply pressured by the astounding capabilities that Luo Ruoxin wielded. In the past, he had not been particularly concerned about Luo Ruoxin's identity or background, choosing to confess to her solely because he liked her. However, in order to win the approval of the Luo clan, he had no choice but to face the difference in their strength and standing. And if even someone as powerful as Luo Ruoxin was not able to turn down the engagement with the Zhong clan, things were truly not optimistic for them. "No matter what, I'll definitely wed you openly as my wife." Zhong Xian clenched his fists tightly in agitation. Yuan Xiao and the others stared at their surroundings with squinted eyes for a very long time, but they were still unable to find anything at all. Eventually, they could only shake their heads and give up. "I really am unable to see what is so special about this place. Why don't you just open the life gate? We'll follow behind you." "All right." Without wasting any time, Luo Xianqing raised his finger and tapped the area right ahead of him. A droplet of blood dripped out from the tip of his finger. Following which, he formed a few hand seals, and a unique power was imbued into the jade token. Wang. With a resounding buzz, the sesame-sized spatial distortion began rotating swiftly, reminiscent of a mini-vortex. Sila. A rift was torn through space with the sesame-sized spatial distortion at its very center. At the same time, the vortex grew bigger and bigger, forming a cone-shaped spiral. "Let's enter," Luo Xianqing said. Perhaps due to having expended too much strength, Luo Xuanqing's face was slightly pale. "All right." Yuan Xiao nodded. Without any hesitation, he took the lead and leaped into the cone-shaped spiral. He was the one who boasted the greatest defensive ability among their group, and considering that they were entering uncharted territory, it was a given that he should be the first one to enter. Who? His 2-meter-wide figure was still rather massive while it was at the top of the cone-shaped spiral, but as he descended, his figure grew smaller and smaller, until it was roughly the size of a needle, before vanishing into the distorted space. This was the first time everyone had seen such a bizarre sight, and their eyebrows could not help but leap up in astonishment. Is this the ability of the 4-dan heavenly art of dimension unravel, creation? Zhong Xian frowned. Even though it seemed like Yuan Xiao had become smaller after jumping into the cone-shaped spiral, in truth, it was just a visual effect arising from the distortion of light due to the bending of space. For example, it was just like how a person would appear to be different in size from a meter away and 100 meters away. Naturally, a person who was 100 meters away, no matter how tall and big they were, would appear to be as small as a sesame seed. Such was the situation over here as well. While the cone-shaped spiral appeared to be only several meters away from them, there were actually many layers of space concealed within it. In terms of absolute distance, it was likely to be several li away from them. Using space as a foundation to create stable space, and even make it so inconspicuous at that. It seems like the person who has left behind this ancient domain is likely to at least be a Saint 9-dan cultivator. On top of that, their comprehension of spatial laws is also extremely deep, perhaps still not on par with ancient sage Qiu Wu yet but definitely far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators, Zhong Xian thought. It was no wonder he had not been able to find anything with his eye of insight previously. This ability to manipulate space was already far beyond what someone of his level could comprehend. Let's head in, too. Seeing that Yuan Xiao had entered, the others also forged ahead. Bai Hongyin leaped in first, followed by Yun Lianhai. Watching as the two of them disappeared, Zhong Xian took a deep breath before jumping into the cone-shaped spiral as well. Who? In an instant, he felt as if he was plummeting through an abyss, heading somewhere he could hardly fathom. This Saint Ascension platform refers to the mountain he went together with Luo Ruoxin and not the one in the Qiu Wu Palace. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,